Hello and welcome to the Gills Fancast. You join me for a very special episode today. We are joined by a man who has made over 376 club appearances with 45 goals in that time between 1984 and 1998. He is of course the man who led the Gills to their first league title in 50 years back in the 2012-13 season. He's a man that I would call a legend of the football club and gave me, and I'm sure you as well, one of your favourite seasons being a Gillingham fan. We've had former players, we've had Adam Barrett, Matt Fish, Stuart Nelson. Now it's time to bring on the mastermind behind it. I'm very proud to welcome to the Fancast today Mr. Martin Allen. Martin, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm very well, like everybody else, tucked in the Alps, looking out on a grey sky and a bit of rain. But I've got to say, Owen, I was quite excited about doing something for you and of the Gillingham.
Yeah, I did think about it actually. It's probably the first bit of media you've done with Gillingham fans since you actually left, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, but when you do leave the football club, you always have to sign these documents or these agreements that state that you're not allowed to talk about anything or say anything. So you are tongue-tied as a manager when you leave a football club. You want to just get out there and tell them everything, but unfortunately, legal documents, mean that you can't.
Yeah, a bit of a poison chalice these days, isn't it? With more social media coming into play, you can get caught out any time.
Oh yeah, I don't bother with all that stuff. That social media. I used to be on bits and pieces, but God bless, it's too painful, too difficult to cope with. I ended up wanting to drive up the motorway one night to someone in Liverpool about 3 o'clock in the morning and meet him face to face. So when I finally woke up in the morning, I decided that was the end of it and that I wasn't going to put myself through all that sort of stuff.
Well, rather you than me doing something like that. But we'll crack straight on with your club career. Your first club was QPR. You became a pro in 1986. You had a great time there. 136 appearances with 16 goals. Played in the 1986 League Cup final. Sadly, a defeat against Oxford, but that was the first club you were made pro at and the first club where you really managed to kick off your career before, of course, you went and joined other clubs, which we'll get into at the point. But being at QPR, how was that for you, becoming a pro and stepping up at the time?
It was amazing. It was an amazing experience. I've been at QPR since I was 12 years old, a schoolboy in Reading, just playing park football and then district football, obviously playing for my school. And it just sort of grew from there. In the end, there was quite a lot of clubs that I used to go training at. But QPR was closest really to my Reading home, on the train into Paddington and then a couple of tubes out to Shepherd's Bush. So it was the right club to go to. And of course, making my debut away at Newcastle and my full league debut away at Newcastle, and then coming on as a sub away at Luton. It was that was a dream come true. To actually get on the pitch in a football league match was just what I dreamt of since I was a little boy.
Is it a bit of an intimidating atmosphere in that sense, or is it a mix of more the nerves and the excitement, but the excitement in the end just overcomes the nerves and you get to really live your dream out without really any of the nerves getting in the way?
When I was sub at Luton, that really didn't bother me. I couldn't wait to get on the pitch. They had a big centre-back that I didn't like. I was only about 18 or 19, called Steve Foster. He had a big headband and big black curly frizzy hair. He was the captain. His shirt was too tight. And he was a dominant captain, old-fashioned bully type. And I went on when we had a free kick on the edge of Luton's box. That was I was introduced as a sub right at that moment. And I remember seeing Steve Foster stood in that position just to the side of the wall, not closing the ball down, but that bigger, like his own man wall himself. And basically I didn't like it. So when I went onto the pitch, the free kick hadn't been taken, and I went and stood in front of him and I just trod on his foot hard and backed into him. And he looked at me, this skinny little kid. He just pushed me. And I said to the referee, what's going on here? So before the ball had even been kicked on my Football League debut, I was getting in trouble and causing trouble. And that was probably how my whole life has been.
That probably sums you up in a way, actually, doesn't it? Because you think about like how you're coming on as a young lad into your first game in the league against this centre back who's probably been there for many years, and you're giving it right to him, and he's probably thinking, "Who's this guy? I've never seen him before." And you put stamp your authority on the game as soon as you can, like just because I'm a young lad, you ain't gonna get around me that easy.
Absolutely, but I've been brought up like that since I was a little boy. My dad. I was always in the middle of it. I always used to wear number 4, central midfield, and whoever we played against, from when I was a little boy, he always used to say to me, don't forget, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. Because I wasn't very tall, I was a little kid. So this little kid with the biggest mouth in the team, I used to kick everybody and ram into everybody, and then have the gob to go with it. And I was playing 2 years older than myself in the Reading school team that I was in. So I was 2 years up, and I've been treated like it. If ever I got hurt, I had to get up. I was never allowed to stay on the floor. I was never allowed to cry. And it was, if he got you, you make sure you get him back double quick. And I was treated and trained like that since when I was 8 years old.
So do you think you're a bit more mature as a football for your age, in the sense that although you were young, you had like sort of the football in mind of someone who's 10 years older, perhaps?
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. My dad was a player. My dad was also a coach and a manager. And on top of that, he was also, what do they call it? He used to coach for the Football Association, the coaches. So all around Berkshire, Hampshire, Oxfordshire, Hertfordshire, Middlesex, he used to do courses in the school holidays for school teachers and people that wanted to get into football coaching. My dad used to do the training sessions to teach them how to do it. And on every school holiday, I used to go along. So by the time I was 12 years old, I knew all the passing drills, dribbling drills, training drills, and I used to be taking part in them to help with the numbers of boys playing. And by the end of it, by the time I was 12, I was telling them how to blinking do the coaching. So I've been brought up on it from a young age, as you rightly say, and just always felt I could do it, really.
All right, so you moved on to West Ham in 1989, spent 6 years there between 89 and 95. You were bought for a 670k fee. Was that at that time felt like a lot of money, or was it, considering now, of course, it's sort of peanuts really in this day and age, but back then was that quite a big fee, and was there any pressure put on you by a fee that big at your age?
Nah, that fee didn't bother me one little bit. A month before that move to West Ham, George Graham, who used to be my youth team manager at QPR, he'd moved the year before to Millwall, and then from Millwall he moved to Arsenal. And I've been doing pretty well under that manager at QPR I had called Trevor Francis. And George Graham tried to sign a double signing from QPR of David Seaman, the England goalkeeper, and myself. I think it was £1 million, and it was 900,000 for David Seaman, and I think it was 100,000 for me. So that would have been an exciting move to go to Arsenal. Obviously, to work with my old manager would have been magnificent, but that didn't happen. And then, of course, that followed the fallout with the birth of my son George. When I left the game up at Newcastle early on a Saturday morning, because I wanted to see the birth of my son.
Yeah, they wanted to make you play the game, didn't they?
Well, yeah, he did, not they, just him, nobody else. So then that move came to West Ham soon after that, and it was a magnificent opportunity for me to play for a club with such a great history, and where my family had come from in the East End of London. Everyone in my family is West Ham supporters.
Yeah, I said to Stuart Nelson the other day that given the character you are, if none of us even knew you played for West Ham at any point, just the way you act, we'd have an idea that you had some sort of West Ham in you from some aspect. That's meant in the most respectful manner possible. So you made 190 appearances for West Ham, 25 goals in that time. Your first goal, of course, was on your debut. I think you scored the second goal in a 3-2 win over Plymouth. What memories do you have from that day, obviously, with it being your debut?
Just a great day. The traffic going into the ground at Upton Park. I couldn't believe the amount of people that were going to watch the game. when I used to play for QPR, I knew the way into Rangers Stadium from the M4, round the back ways of Chiswick, and I'd never used to hit any traffic. When I went to West Ham the first time, I'd left early because I didn't obviously want to be late. The roads going into the ground, I'm not going to call it a stadium, the ground at Upton Park, I couldn't believe how many people with West Ham shirts, West Ham scarves, families, traffic. Oh my God, what a buzz it was. And then, like you said, to score that diving header from that corner in front of that stand, I think it's the West Stand, was quite a surreal moment.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially being at a club like West Ham, they're all very together, they all drive for the same thing. It's a very together-orientated fan base. It still is now, of course. And moving on to 1991, you obviously won promotion to the First Division, and then only 2 years later, promotion to the Premier League. That must have been a whirlwind couple of years for you.
Yeah, it was. It was up and down. I think we got a relegation within there as well, and to get that promotion on that day was amazing. A great experience, and one I learned from, obviously.
I can imagine that sort of time in your career, because you're still relatively early on, really, if you think about it, and to get something like that is quite something memorable, and obviously that must have given you the impetus to, go into your coaching career later on and know how to get certain things done, and we'll come on to that with the obvious example, which we'll have to talk about in coming time. So I want to talk about a couple of stories that I researched before coming on about your time at West Ham. The first one is the obvious name tag of Mad Dog. I've heard this story a couple of times. I think it was to do with yourself. You were playing in midfield alongside Ian Bishop at the time at West Ham. So I think I know the story off the top of my head now, but for those of people listening who aren't aware, can you just repeat the story of how Mad Dog came to be?
I must have been asked this question 1,000 times.
1001.
Well, the Sun newspaper at the time was a big selling newspaper, no social media. So everybody bought a paper in those days, everybody. And it was I think most people bought the Sun. And on the front page of the Sun newspaper was a story about these mad dogs being imported into this country from America. And they were savage and they would fight, and as we know, those dogs do. So anyway, we played in a game, and it was quite a well-run story over a few weeks, because some of these dogs started attacking young children and people generally, I think. We played a game, and one day I'd injured somebody over near the chicken run at West Ham, and I had a skinhead at the time. My shirt was out, my socks were down a little bit, and stood there looking quite aggressive in that horrible face that I can sometimes have. And Ian Bishop, who was quite the opposite type of character to me, he was all smiley and happy and enjoyed playing good football, whereas my job was the opposite side of that. He came over. He said, "Matt, you got all spit down the outside of your mouth," and he pointed up at my chin. I looked at him and said, "You what?" He said, you got all spit," and he laughed as he said it. "You got all spit round your mouth, like saliva, all that sort of stuff around the outside of your mouth." I don't think he used the word saliva. And then I said, "Yeah." He said, "You look like one of those mad dogs." And he started laughing. Well, some of the people in the chicken run over the far side, they picked up on it, and from that and from the other players, it stuck. And it was from Ian Bishop that day. I can't remember who it was that was injured, but I think he was all right. It kind of stuck from there, and it just rolled on and on and on. So did the Sun campaign about these dogs being banned coming from America. It just rolled on from that, really. And onwards from that, there's probably a few naughty tackles I did, which was, bad tackles, I guess, in that time. And it all just kind of picked up. And then some funny bits and pieces I did, which I never planned. They just kind of happened, and it all just rolled into one.
Was it a nickname that at the time you got given it, you were thinking, "Oh God, here we go, I'm never going to shake this," but then in the end you sort of just grew into it and started to enjoy it as a sort of a name tag as it was?
Well, it's a really weird thing, because I also used to run a soccer school company, and I had a lot of soccer schools all over the south of England, and including a football holiday camp in the New Forest in Hampshire. So I used to work extremely hard away from football, trying to develop a new career for myself and experience what it was to manage a company to put me in good stead for when I finished playing. I had to go and see sponsors and see chief executives in big companies up in London. And I'd give them my spiel, and after about 10 minutes, the guy would say to me, "Oh, I understand your name's Mad Dog. Why would I want to put my children in a course with you?" And it's a very difficult question to answer.
Yeah.
But God bless, that company went on for 12 years. We were very, very successful and a lot of big sponsors. It put me in a good stead. But at that point, the Mad Dog thing was a bit of a noose around my neck. But when you think of it, how many players do you know that have actually got their nickname, a nickname?
Not many.
Not many. And I could be in an airport, I could be filling up with petrol, I could be walking down a high street, wherever. Whatever club people support, they'll come up to me and say, "All right, Mad Dog, all right, Mad Dog." And it's kind of stuck wherever I go, really.
At least it's something you keep with your whole career, and it sort of does aid what you did with all the tackles and whatnot. Sort of ties in brilliantly, and it's something you probably will never get rid of now, but it's something that these people were always attached to you. So, another story I heard, this is when obviously Harry Redknapp was involved in the club, and you had a away game against Chelsea, and I believe you forgot your boots and had to wear a pretty colourful set of shoes to...
How did you find out about that?
I did my research, Martin, I told you. I spent hours on this. You're cornered now.
On the Friday lunchtime after training at West Ham at Chadwell Heath, near Romford there, I said to the manager, Harry Redknapp, because I live in West London, or west of London, I don't live in West London, could I go straight to Stamford Bridge instead of coming round to West Ham and then coming back across? And he went, "Yeah, no problem. Make sure you're in the dressing room for 1:30. So anyway, on a Saturday morning before a game, just to keep busy and pass the time, I used to go out into my garden and I used to do a bit of weeding or trimming the plants and bushes and just tick over outside and just keep my mind going. Nervous tension and all that sort of stuff, getting rid of all that. Anyway, end of that little gardening session, came in, had my shower, had my pre-match meal, scrambled egg on toast with beans and a bottle of water and a banana. Had my tracksuit on, claret and blue, and I went to the front door, and by the front door, I guess like most houses, you have all your shoes, don't you? Your shoes that you wear. So I was looking around and I couldn't see my trainers, which was a bit weird. So I looked all round the house, looked outside in the little bit where all my gardening tools were, looked in the car, couldn't find my blinking trainers anywhere. The only pair of trainers that were by the front door was a pair of bright pink Converse boots. So I didn't have no option. I had a pair of black shoes to wear or my pink Converse boots. So I'd done up my Converse boots with a bit of a smile on my face on the bottom step in my house, smiling and grinning to myself, knowing that this was going to be quite funny. Drove into West London, got to the gate at Stamford Bridge, and I said, "The car park pass for Martin Allen, please." He went, "No car park pass for you, mate." I said, "Yeah, it's been put on yesterday by the manager." He said, "I can come straight here. Martin Allen, I played for West Ham." He said, "I know who you played for. There's no car park pass. You ain't coming in here." And he gave me the look. So I had to drive out onto the King's Road. I've done a couple of rights and a couple of lefts and found a car parking space. And it's now getting just after 1:20, and it's closing in on my 1:30 deadline that I had to be in on time.
Yeah.
So I started jogging along. And on the left-hand side, by that little one-back bridge, there's a pub with all the Chelsea fans outside. And they saw me running along. And I thought, I better cross over here, just in case. So I crossed the road, and they all recognised me. And by the time I got to the dressing room, I had a full sweat on. And as I knocked on the door to go into the awaiting dressing room at Stamford Bridge, Harry Redknapp was there, Frank Lampard was there, all the other players were there. And as I walked in, they saw I had a pair of pink Converse boots on. So everybody laughed, apart from Harry. He sort of looked the other way and ignored it. And God bless, we won that day, scored with a diving header.
The luck of the pink.
The next home game, I had to wear a suit to the home game. You have to wear suits to the home game. And into the game, I wore a suit and I kept my pink Converse boots to wear with my suit. Harry Redknapp went absolutely ballistic.
Could be a good luck charm, though.
After the game, he said, "To wear them, you've got to be a good player. You ain't a good player. If you're going to wear a pair of boots like that, you've got to show it. And you can't wear them. Get your shoes on." And I just sort of, everyone else was laughing, especially Julian Dix. But it's certainly something, if I was a manager and that sort of stuff happened, oh my God, can you imagine it?
You could have just covered it up and said, "I've worn them once and we've won once." So clearly you can just at least make a case that you can wear them every game until you lose.
Yeah, but we lost the next home game and I'd worn them, so he was not happy. And you don't argue with Harry when he's not happy.
No, there you go then. So we'll move on to how you left West Ham. You're playing in the midfield alongside Julian Dix, as you mentioned there, a very notable name. Everyone knows who he is. John Moncur, Don Hutchinson. And there were a few disciplinary issues, including yourself getting a red card against your old side QPR. That was in May of 1995, and you only went on to play 5 more times for the Hammers after that before leaving. What do you think ultimately led to the way you ended up leaving West Ham in that sense? Was it a bit due to the disciplinary issues throughout that midfield, or was it just like a natural end to your time at the club?
No disciplinary issues. It was plain and simple. Well, two things. Number one, my left knee was in a bad way. My left knee was not right. I wasn't training all the time. I played in every game, but I was not right. And in the end, it proved to be my downfall. When I did go to Portsmouth, I think it was a year and a half later, I had 2 operations on it, and I couldn't really play anymore. And then the other thing that was the crucial thing, the biggest thing, is that my dad was diagnosed with cancer. In the early January, he was given 6 or 7 months to live, and from a person that had virtually hardly ever missed a game of football that I played in, hardly ever, very, very rarely did he ever miss a game with me playing. Home or away, he would be there. My dad was ill for the first time, and it took over my life, to be honest. My love of football, I wouldn't say it, well, I'd say it faded. It didn't disappear, but it faded. Harry was brilliant. He gave me a lot of time off to take him to the Royal Berks Hospital in Reading for treatment. I spent a lot of time with my mum and dad. My dad had been my mentor for my whole life. As well as a dad, he was more of a coach and a manager to me personally. And so when he was poorly, I knew he was going to be, he was going to be dying in a not too distant future. Going out with that ground at Upton Park without my dad being there, it may sound a bit. I wasn't sure I wanted to do it. I wasn't sure I could handle it, and I wasn't fit, and I wasn't playing as well, and I wasn't as mobile as what I was. So I think they were the main 2 factors that pushed me out to Portsmouth, and it was a breath of fresh air to get away, change the scenery. After my dad had died, I had to do something about it because I wasn't handling it very well.
Of course. Well, at least of course you can look back at your whole career now and know you did an incredible job in just making him forever proud of you, and obviously your achievements back that up completely. And obviously it's a tough thing to go through. Obviously it's hard to relate to in some aspects, but it obviously we're very, very sorry to hear that loss. But yeah, as I say, your achievements following that just back up how much of a mentor I suppose he was to you, that you could recreate some of his greatest achievements and then obviously keep making him proud of what you're doing. So you said you did move on to Portsmouth, 45 appearances there, only 4 goals, 500,000 fee from West Ham to Portsmouth after initial successful loan spell. But was it a bit of a frustrating time at Portsmouth between the 3 years you were there, including the loan spell to Southend, of course, which is where you ended your career between Portsmouth and Southend. That career obviously ended in 98. So how did that last 3 or so years of your career feel to you? Because you obviously retired at 32, which that nowadays at least would be considered quite an early age to retire, somewhat, depending on what your level you're at, of course. But back then it might have been a more common theme. Did you just feel it didn't quite work out at Portsmouth? And obviously, given what you said about your dad, how he was a coach and you were learning that as well, did you feel like it was the right time for you to give up football in terms of playing and then go and prosper in the coaching side?
The physio and the doctor at Portsmouth did not know, and they couldn't work out what was wrong with my left knee. And I'd had 3 or 4 operations on it, and each time I recovered, full gym work and rehab work, which anybody will tell you is quite hard work and can be quite tedious. So I'd got myself into great shape, ready for when I came back into the team at Portsmouth. I was club captain there. And it flared up again. So I went to see a different consultant up in Harley Street in London. They put me in for an exploratory operation. They didn't know what it was they were going in for, but I knew it was going to be, as I say, exploratory. Anyway, I got put in late afternoon on surgery, and then it was about 10:15 at night. I was in a nice hospital, on my own in a room, and there was a knock on the door. This guy, the consultant, came in, and he had a nice suit on. He had his flip chart thing, his little clipboard with him. He had those glasses, what they call them, bifocal glasses. Half of them are missing. And he stood down at the end of the bed. He looked down the bed. He said, "Oh, Martin, good evening." I said, "Oh, hi." And he had a really straight face on, like an old-fashioned headmaster. And he said, he flipped open the page, the paper. He rolled the paper over his little clipboard. That was it, clipboard, that's the word I'm looking for. Rolled the clipboard over. He had a little pause. He said, "I've got bad news for you, Martin." He said, "I don't think," he said, "well, you won't play professional football anymore. This is the injury. This is what you've got." He said, "There's nothing I'll be able to do about it." He said, "I'm terribly sorry." He said, "But it's not going to be happening for you anymore." He said, "I know this is devastating news to you." He said, "I'll come back and see you early tomorrow morning." He said, "and we'll have a further chat." So as quick as he said it, he went out of the room, and I was sat in there on my own. It was quite late at night, and I can't deny I had tears coming down my cheeks. I realised now that it was never ever going to happen for me again. That buzz of playing professional football since that first time when I came on as a sub at Luton, I was never ever going to have that feeling in my life again, which is the most amazing rush of energy you could ever get. Yeah. And it was over. So it was a tough time, and it was only a year and a half before that I'd lost my dad, and it put me in a bad place really, with wondering as a person what I was going to do and how I was going to earn a living, make a living as a 32-year-old. When you stopped playing football, the sponsors for my soccer schools didn't really want to know, because I had access to all the top players at that time. So I was left very vulnerable in a state of uncertainty how I was going to live my life, what I was going to do.
Yeah, so of course you made your first step into management as assistant at Reading, and that was in 2002. But before we get to that, as you mentioned there, the gap between obviously you retiring in 98 and then you getting the Reading assistant job in 2002, what was that 4-year period in between like for you, with obviously the uncertainty surrounding your involvement in football?
I was a gardener.
Oh, I can see that, to be fair.
Gardens. Didn't you know that?
No.
I lived in a posh area of West London called Gerrard's Cross. So I think I was the poorest person in Gerrard's Cross. But one day I thought to myself, well, I need to do something. So I put an advert in the local newsagent in the middle of the high street in Gerrard's Cross. Gardener, 10 years experience, male, 32 years old, just moved to the area, happy to do any work, starting ASAP. Well, within 48 hours, I had about 10 people call me, and I had 10 gardens in Gerrard's Cross, and I was doing people's gardens. Didn't know what I was doing, but I could cut the grass, do the edging, and trim the rose bushes. Apart from that, I didn't have a clue what was going on. And that's what I was doing. And on top of that, I went on to a couple of courses, and I was doing some scouting at the time for Kevin Keegan at Fulham. And it was when I did that scouting for Kevin Keegan at Fulham that I first had my break, because they'd sent me to watch Reading play at home against Newport County, I think it was. It was a Saturday afternoon, and Reading hadn't won something like 12 matches.
Yeah, they were in a relegation zone when you joined them.
Yeah, it was 0-0, second half, 20 minutes to go. And, I don't know, let me take you back. The tickets that my son, George, and me had were in the corner flag at the Medeski Stadium. And it was a long way to see the pitch. So at half-time, we had a cup of tea in the Scouts lounge. I said, come on, let's get some seats on the halfway line. So we walked along the back of the boxes at the Medeski, sneaked into a couple of seats. 20 minutes into the second half, the crowd are starting to get a bit restless. And a bloke 20 yards to my left stood up and shouted, "Pardew, you don't know what you're doing." 5 minutes later, Alan Pardew made 2 substitutions. He took off the right back and put the right winger to right back. The centre forward came across to play right wing, and he put on a centre forward. 1 substitution, so that was it. And I thought it was a positive and a good move. Well, this fella stood up, he's 20 yards away from me. He stood up, and he went, "You don't know what you're effing doing, Pardew. Sack him." And I looked across and I thought, I don't think there's much more the manager could have done. And I don't know why I did it, because I didn't know Alan Pardew. I stood up and said, "Boy, why don't you sit down and support the team?" I didn't know him. I had my son next to me.
It's just that instinct.
Out of it, just pure instinct. About 30 seconds later, it had all gone a bit quiet because everybody could see that this bloke was a bit of a unit as well. This woman, this lady, not a woman, this woman, the lady in front of me and this bloke, she looked back at me over her right shoulder, and the bloke in front of me looked back at me over his left shoulder. And the bloke said, "Thanks ever so much for sticking up for my brother." I went, "You what?" And she said, "Thanks very much for sticking up for my husband."
Oh. Yeah,
I said, "Oh, that's all right, no problem." Carried on watching the game. Reading won the game 1-0.
Just the way it is, isn't it?
After that, I got the job. That is how I got it.
It's always the stories like that where you always see, it's almost like it's scripted in a way. You hear a story about some guy berating the team, berating the tactics, and you just know in your back of your head that they're going to go and win this now. Like even though you know it's not scripted, you just say it inside your nose, this will happen now because that's happened. But
I suppose that's me as a person. I suppose that's my personality, my character, and without going overboard. When I was Portsmouth reserve team manager in that last year of my contract, I took a reserve team to Medeski Stadium to play against Alan Pardew's Reading team. So for us at Portsmouth, it was quite a big game going into play there. I think it was a Monday night, and we beat them 4-0. And our Portsmouth team, or my Portsmouth team at the time, was absolutely superb. Full of energy, full of enthusiasm. We played really good football, won comfortably. And Alan Pardew rang me the next morning at 9 o'clock. I didn't know him. And just said, "Oh, thanks ever so much for, just well done for your team last night. That's the best performance we've seen against any of the teams we've played all season. Well done." That was it. Don't think nothing else of it. And then a few months later, 6 months later, he rang me up whilst I was doing those gardens in Gerrard's Cross. Met him in Slough one Thursday night, went to training on the Friday morning, played Colchester on the Saturday, won 1-0, 4,000 people in the Medeski Stadium, and that's from that game, I would say, has been the springboard to what's been happened at Reading over the last, 15 years? I can't, deny that has had a significant part to play in it.
Yeah, we mentioned that, especially given what happened a couple of years after you left. But when you did join up with Adam Pardew, they were, as we mentioned, in the relegation zone, Reading. But in the last 20 games, they won 12 of them, I think, and ended up achieving a top 10 finish. They basically, from the time you arrived, given the situation they're in, they showed almost like title winning form, if you like, to win 12 out of 20 and completely shoot up the top divisions. Is that when you thought perhaps your relationship with Adam Pardew at the time was him bringing you in? Is that when you maybe thought he sort of looked at you and thought there's a good coach here, he knows what he's doing, and that perhaps gave you the extra confidence you needed to springboard into all the achievements you achieved post that era?
I didn't need any extra confidence. If anything, I had too much.
I was hoping you'd say that.
I didn't need any more, really. I had the self-belief, the confidence. I had it in bundles. And if you haven't got self-belief, if you haven't got confidence when you do that job, and if you doubt yourself in any way, shape or form as a manager, then you're zero. It can come across as arrogant. It can come across as big-headed. It can come across as all those different words that we all know. But unless you've got that steely determination and that self-belief, then you can't be a manager. You can't. It's just not. You just can't do it.
Got to have proper thick skin for a role like that as well. Like, as you mentioned before, the abuse Pardew was getting. If you're someone in the hot seat at a club like Reading and you're getting barrage of abuse going towards you and you sort of fold yourself in and don't really know how to respond to it, you're not going to be able to succeed, because as tough as it is getting that sort of abuse, the best managers are the ones that can suck it up and turn it into a positive, which he did that day, of course.
Heroing. I was taught many lessons when I was a little boy playing in school football and Sunday football and district football in Reading when I was a little boy. Because I was small and I was fearless at tackling, and I was also gobby with my mouth to other players and the referee, I used to get abused every game I played by the opposition managers, coaches and parents from when I was a little kid. When I used to get in the car, my dad would say, "Well done, that's the way to do it. Don't say nothing back to them, just get on and do it." And I was taught, and I was trained, if you like, from when I was a young age, that no people on the side of the pitch was ever going to break me. And I would do everything I can. If they made it hard for me, I'd make it worse for them. And he would always reiterate, don't let them get you. You get them. You get them. You get them. You go after them and just keep doing what you're doing. Because I used to tackle and I used to win. And I used to shout about it big time. Not shout literally, but have comments to them. So when I went into management, all those things what I've been taught when I was a little kid, it was water off a duck's back. It made it even stronger for me and better for me.
I suppose it's about actions, not words, in response to that. When you're getting that sort of abusive, let's say you're a manager, for example, which of course you were, there's people abusing you in the stands for results not perhaps going the right way. You don't turn around and give them a bit of lip or whatever backwards. You make the changes, you get the result, and then you have the satisfaction at the end of knowing that you turned it around and you got the best out of it in the end, the last laugh, if you like.
Yeah, well, just a real quick one. I played when I was young, and we played in a team on the other side of Reading, and one of the boys that I was playing against was a good player, and his dad was over the far side of the pitch, and I kicked his son. His dad, I was only 9, his dad shouted at me about being a dirty little BAS. Are you allowed to swear on this?
Preferably no, but if it's I'll allow it.
Dad called me a dirty little bar steward.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I went to him from the middle of the pitch and said, "Why don't you F off?"
Yeah.
His dad walked round.
At 9 years old.
Yeah, I was 9. His dad walked round the pitch and said, "Your son just told me to F off." And my dad said, "Right." They said, "Well, what are you going to do about it?" He said, "If I was you, I would F off." He said, "I'll walk down and I'll have a chat with you." And this was from about 15 yards away, and the bloke's getting closer and closer. And my dad could sort of handle himself as well a little bit. Yeah. So the bloke turned on his heels and walked all the way back round. And when I got back into the car, my dad said, "Whatever happens, when you're on that football pitch, you play and you do anything you can to win. Now you're off that football pitch and you're back in this car and we go home, you make sure you behave properly and you conduct yourself and you behave, you have good manners and you do things right." Because my mum was the opposite. She would make sure I'd done my own work, my bedroom was tidy, my shoes were clean, I brushed my teeth, I ate properly. I had good standards of behaviour. So my mum was one side and my dad was on the other. And it kind of gave me a decent sort of upbringing, I think.
So that's one of them stories I was saying to Stuart Nelson, some of the stories he told me about you. If someone had just told me that random story there, I'd say, yeah, have a laugh, that ain't happened. And when people realise it's you think, actually, yeah, I do believe that. It's just the nature of your character that we've all grown to love over the years. So this is going to be one of them where we come back about 10, 1,500 times throughout this podcast. But Barnet, spell 1, 2003 to 4. Got actually a funny story about when you got promoted from the National League with Barnet a few years ago, but we'll come to that because I was at that game. So yeah, Barnet 2003 to 4 as your first out of 5 spells, I believe. You did, by all accounts, you were doing really well at the start of that season. Then, obviously, towards the end of it, Brentford came calling, and this is something that obviously happened later on in your Barnet career, where Notts County went and took you, but we'll get to that in due course. When you were obviously doing very well in the National League at that point in the season, you could have perhaps searched for promotion and whatnot. Was it a hard decision to leave when Brentford came in? Granted, they're a couple of leagues above from Barnet at the time, but given the position you were in with the Bees and the positive nature of it, did you think it was a tough one to leave Barnet, or just the call of Brentford too much to ignore at the time?
Let me just take you back a little bit. Let me just take you back. When you said I joined Barnet, I was first team coach to Peter Shreve. He was the first team manager and I was coach to Peter Shreve. So he used to let me do all the training, but he used just to manage it. And he didn't do a great deal of work, but he was a big father figure to me and he helped me. He had a fallout with the chairman and he rang me up one night, Peter, about 8 o'clock. He said, Martin, I've had enough. He said, I'm leaving. He said, I've told the chairman to give the job to you. He said, so don't even think about it. Take the job and all the best. He said, ring me at the end of the season and I hope you do well. 10 minutes later, the chairman rang me. He said, Martin, I've had a fallout with Peter. He said, I want you to do the job this Saturday against Hereford, who at the time were top of the league. And he said, if you do okay, he said, we'll have a chat about the job at the end of the season. Oh my God. I think I was about 34. I had no qualifications, I had no job, and at last I had an opportunity. I had an opportunity. I called the centre forward, who was the top goal scorer. He was the England C centre forward.
Yeah.
And this is on a Friday. All the big clubs were watching him. And I told him on the Thursday lunchtime, I think it was a Thursday lunchtime or the Friday lunchtime, he's not playing and he's not sub. It was a Friday morning before training, and that he could go home.
Yeah.
He looked at me and went, what? I said, I don't want you involved. You're not going to be involved. Go home, do what you like. 10 minutes later, I got the chairman on the phone. Martin, what are you doing with the centre forward? Junior Agogo it was, God bless him.
Oh, yeah.
He said, I've just had his agent on the phone, and you told Junior he's not playing. He said, I've got all these clubs coming to watch him Saturday and I want to sell him. So I said, they will come, pay for their car park and their ticket. I said, but he ain't playing. I don't want him in the team. He said, why? Why? I said, because he doesn't play for the team, he doesn't run about, and he won't do what I want him to do. And I want only people in our team, that are going to do it for the club and not for himself.
So did you feel he was one of them players that perhaps was using Barnet as more of a stepping stone for himself rather than for the greater good of the club?
Yeah, well, he was going to be moving on anyway because he was a good player. But at the time, he wasn't doing it. If the chance would come to score, he'd get the ball and dribble around 5 people and hit it as hard as he could every time. And I didn't think it was conducive with and without the ball for him to be successful. But anyway, we're playing Hereford at home. Hereford at home, top of the league, best team in the league. Graham Turner was the manager. We had 11 players defending, and we had about 3 players attacking. Everybody else run himself into the ground. And guess what? My first game in professional football, we won 1-0. The crowd went absolutely mental. the supporters after the players in the dressing room, we all hugged each other, we squeezed each other. I thanked every one of them. I couldn't tell them how pleased and happy I was with all of them. And I thought, this is it. This is what I love, and this is what it's all about. The chairman was waiting outside for me, and he said, Martin, he said, I think you made the right decision. So he said, it was a big call on your part to leave out our biggest player and our best player for the sake of the team. He said, I think we're going to do very well together.
Wow. Wonder what the conversation would have been like if you hadn't won that game.
Well, if my auntie had balls, she'd be my uncle.
Well, there
We
you
did
go.
win it. So we did win it. So you could always say if this and if that. We did win it. The call was made. It was a big call. It was a brave move. It was whatever move we want to call it. It worked. We haven't been winning. We've been playing anyway. So for me, it was the right thing to do, and it sent a message to all the other players. This is the standard. This is what we want, and this is what you do if you're going to play for Barnet.
So you did get the call from Brentford later on in that season. So what was it about Brentford at the time? Obviously they were in a higher league, but is it just that, or was there a bit more about them that you found really interesting and you wanted to move on? And obviously not bittersweet in the end, but in a sense. But I'm sure when you left Barnet, you would have hoped they could have got the job done. But unfortunately, they did lose in the playoffs that year. But you did move on to Brentford. So as I say, what was it about the Bees that interested you at that time?
2-division jump, unbelievable. You don't very often get a 2-division jump from. I don't like people calling it non-league from the conference to go up to Division 1.
It's just a testament to how well you did, though, in Barnet.
From Barnet to Brentford, the 2-division jump is too big a jump. You can't miss those opportunities when you're in football management.
Mm.
If you're not successful as a football manager, we all know all the crowd want you sacked anyway. So on the other side of it, as a manager, when you do well, when you get an opportunity, you should make the best of it. Because it works both ways. It's the same both ways. That's obvious to everybody. So that chance to go to Brentford, it came completely out of the blue. They hadn't won for a long time. We had 9 games to stay in Division 1. It was nicknamed the Great Escape from all the Brentford supporters. And I don't think they'd won for 13 games. And in the 9, I think we won 6, drew 2 and lost 1. It was remarkable to stay up and then rebuild that team in the summer to get into the playoff places and get to the 5th round of the FA Cup in our first full season was quite unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so many of those players went on to play in the Premier League that I've taken from the lower levels to come up and train them.
Yeah, likes of Stephen Hunt, Jay Taub, both went to Reading as well, actually, funnily enough. Michael Turner was in there as well.
Yeah, Michael Turner. Who else? I had Dion Burton, of course, he was playing there. Jamie Lawrence was international. Lloyd Owusu went on to play for Ghana.
Yeah.
DJ Campbell, of course, with the career that he had. Andrew Frampton, the career that he had at championship level. Stuart Nelson, as you rightly mentioned earlier, he's been part of a great career. And there's several others as well. You sit at home watching Match of the Day with a Chinese takeaway, and one of your players that you've taken from non-league on 300 quid a week is playing in the Premier League and playing really well. What a feeling! What a surreal feeling! You can't imagine what it's like.
So the following seasons from that Great Escape, as you called it, you went on to finish 4th and then 3rd season after season in the playoffs, but beaten by Sheffield Wednesday and Swansea respectively in those 2 years. You put your team down as a 2-bob team in 2004, 2005. How did you come to think of that term, and what was that down to exactly?
For what? Sorry, what was that last bit?
You called your Brentford team of 04-05 the 2-bob team.
Well, it didn't cost us anything.
No, it's meant what was the meaning behind it in a sense?
What did I call them? A 2-bob team?
Yeah.
Well, it's quite a long time ago, and I've probably edited quite a few footballs, so I can't exactly remember exactly what I meant by that. But thinking about it, it would probably be I always wanted to stay humble, and I always wanted them to keep their feet on the ground and not believe in all the hype that had come so very, very quickly.
Yeah.
To get to the 5th round of the FA Cup twice, and playing Premier League clubs, and beating Sunderland, and then drawing away at Southampton, mine included, all of our lives changed pretty quickly. Agents were all over everybody to move club and go and play at higher levels, go and manage at higher levels. It was non-stop, and the media just loved Brentford because we were hard-working, down-to-earth lads, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But with such a young group of players who were talented, extremely talented, you knew that it couldn't last unless we at Brentford could give them big contracts. We knew that they were going to be moving on, and that's what I found difficult. And I was exhausted as well, to be honest. I didn't think I could manage it for another season without all those good players playing in my team. I just thought it was going to be a recipe for a nightmare for me.
Yeah, we'll get on to that resignation, the reasons for you just touched on there, but we'll talk about your unorthodox methods in those sort of games you spoke about. When I was researching, I found two funny stories. That before the game at Southampton, you jumped in the River Solent before that game for reasons, and then you went and swam in the River Tees before the FA Cup game against Hartlepool. When we were talking to some of the players from the Gillingham side, they said you did some sort of unorthodox things in a way, like you take your shirt off in the middle of a game and you just try and distract them. Is that sort of a way of just I don't know what the word is really, but sort of like putting all the attention on yourself so it makes them feel less pressured, perhaps?
No, not really. The one at Hartlepool that you mentioned, I think it was the second game of that, what I call the Great Escape, the 9-game run that I had at the end of the season at Brentford. Second game away at Hartlepool. Brentford haven't won away from home all season. Hartlepool were in the playoffs. I think they were third or fourth in the league. Good team. They had lost at home all season. We went up there on the Friday morning. Friday afternoon, we had a little walk down the driveway to the bottom of the hotel, end of the road, onto the main road, crossed the main road, and as we crossed the main road, there was a field with a little river in it. And because we'd had a long journey up from London to Hartlepool, we decided that the coach Adrian Whitbread and the physio Damien Doyle would just do a gentle loosen off session, just to get their legs and bodies moving before going back to the hotel for a bath and then dinner at 7. Standard practice really with all football clubs. Anyway, I was stood about 20 yards away watching them play a bit of football, piggy in the middle, that little game, and they were doing some stretches and they were doing some dynamic stretches. And then the captain, who was a tough boy from Stuart Talbot, when they were doing their stretches, he said to one of the other players, "I'll give you a £5 if you swim across that river," to one of the other players. And I was listening to this, I wasn't talking to anybody, straight face. And then somebody else said, "Yeah, I'll give you a £5, I'll give you a £5, I'll give you a £5. So all of a sudden it was up to about 25 quid for one of the other players to swim across this little river. It was only about 15, 20 yards wide.
Yeah.
I've been listening to this, not saying nothing, and my head starts going into overdrive. I said, "Stop, oi, 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 hold it there. If you say you're going to swim it, why don't you, get in and swim it?" And I stared at them with that horrible face I can have.
Yeah.
And it was absolute silence. So to end the silence, I said, "If you all pay a £5, I'll get in and swim it." And the captain said, "Will you?" I said, "If you say you're going to swim it, I'll swim it. You get the money together and I'll throw it." And they went off for a jog and they're all giggling and they're all laughing like little kids. As they run away all together, I'm looking at the river thinking, "Oh my God, what have I put myself in for?
Mm-hmm.
I do not want to go across that river." When they all came back, the captain said, "Right, Gaffer," he said, "all of us are putting £1 each." He said, "That comes up to about £27, including the staff, and you can swim the river." I said, "Absolutely, definitely right, I will. Have no fear." So I took my shirt off, took my socks off, took my shoes off, took my socks off, pulled my trainers back on, ran down the edge of the riverbank, crossed the little bridge, ran back along, and all my first team squad and staff were looking across the river at me. And I stood on the side of the river and I'm thinking, "Oh my God, this is a nightmare." So there's a little pause. I jumped in and I swam as hard as I could and as quick as I could across to the other side with every player laughing their socks off. When I got to the other side, I looked at them in fierce fighting mode and said, if you say you're going to swim it, you get in and effing swim it. And I ran off back to the hotel. Jeez. When it came to dinner at 7 o'clock, I barged into their dinner at 7 because the staff used to eat at about 7:45. And I was all smart and I was all clean and well presented. And I said, listen, if you say you're going to do something, you've got to get in and do it. Don't talk about it. Don't talk about it. Do it. The next morning, after breakfast, the physio and the coach went to a shop in Hartlepool called Pronto Print. Now, for the older people listening to this, they might know what Pronto Print is. It was a printing shop where you could go and get stuff photocopied or get pictures blown up or whatever it was. And they went and they bought 20, I think it's A3 size posters, bigger than A4. I think that's A3.
Yeah.
They went down to do the kit in the dressing room at Hartlepool, and they bought some blue tack and they posted all these posters inside the dressing room at Hartlepool. If you say you're going to swim it, then swim it. When they came back to the hotel, those two came up to my room and said, Gaffer, we've done these posters, we've put them all inside the dressing room, we can take them down if you don't want them up, but it looks good. What time is the meeting? So I said, no team meeting, we'll just go straight to the ground, we'll get in the dressing room, let's go and win the game. No meeting. I said, no, all the work has been done. So we got down there and the players walked into the dressing room and their faces when they saw the dressing room, it was like a wallpaper of A3 posters. If you say you're going to swim it, then swim it. They absolutely loved it. And God bless, we won 2-0.
That's an incredible story, actually. You see, when I was researching, all it said was like you just swam the river. I didn't know it was so in depth as that. It was just massive like motivational push for your whole team, and I suppose that goes along with like what you've already been talking about so far in this episode about your upbringing and getting into the game and where you are now. That when you have your mind set on something, we all know that you will do it and you won't take any shortcuts. You'll make sure it's done the way you want it to be done, and even that goes for. Even when you're not playing anymore and you're just coaching aside, you're willing to just go and swim a river just to prove a point to your team. And obviously, given you won the game, it worked out brilliantly, I suppose. So that's a nice, fun story to involve there. So when you left Brentford, you resigned in May of 2006 due to the lack of backing from the board. You sort of touched on this just prior to that.
That's not true. That's not true. Lack of backing. They'd done everything they could. But there was going to be no opportunity to strengthen that team. There was not the finances in place to give those players new contracts. So it wasn't anything to do with the board. They did everything they could to persuade me to stay. I told them I needed to have a break. I needed to have a rest. I was exhausted, and I was exhausted. And the big mistake I made was not taking a longer break. After the 2.5 years at Brentford, I should have, for my own well-being, before joining MK Dons, I should have taken more of a break.
Yeah, see, okay, yeah, interesting actually that you needed that break considering the success you just had at Brentford, but I suppose the way it ended up sort of makes sense. But you did go to MK Dons between 2006 to 2007, and they were, despite having a lot of money there through Pete Winkelman, they were in the point of a decline, weren't they? They'd gone down from the Championship down to League Two at the point, and you managed to turn them around that season. Yeah, you signed Keith Andrews, I remember, the Irish player who's quite known as quite a fan favourite down there still to this day till he retired. And yeah,
on a free transfer, that one.
Pardon?
Was that one on a free transfer that went on to play for Ireland in the World Cup?
Yep.
Yeah, that was it. That was exciting, that one.
Quite a fan favourite down there at MK Dons. So yeah, obviously you dropped to League Two through the Championship at MK Dons. They were in a bit of a free fall, but you managed to turn them around and stop the decline in a sense. You got them to a playoff final, but not playoff final, playoff semi-final, but defeated by Shrewsbury. Well, you said you perhaps should have taken a longer break between the Brentford job and the MK Dons job, and then did you feel like the MK Dons job sort of just although you did relatively well getting to obviously the playoffs, of course, did you feel it sort of just came a bit too early for you?
Yeah, it probably did. It's probably needed a break. I do work 24/7, and it's on my head 24/7 when I work. It doesn't escape me. It makes it difficult for my family life. It makes it difficult for my own health and well-being. The MK Bonds was a massive turnaround. The culture of that club, totally, when I got there, in my opinion, I don't think I'm talking out of term, totally wrong. I've been to a game at the end of their previous season on a Sunday afternoon, and I saw them play. I sat up in the stand as the manager of Brentford, and I saw players sitting there with sunglasses on. I saw them with suits on with their ties halfway down their waist and the two top buttons undone like it was a team of film stars. And they had girlfriends that looked like had come out of, I can't say what type of magazine. It was like, oh my God, I don't like this. I didn't like the culture. They couldn't give they played Derby, that was what it was. It was MK Dons versus Derby. And I was surrounded by, it was not what I wanted, not what I liked. No way I'd have had that at Brentford. Just wasn't conducive in my mind. So no, that was a lot of work to do. And I rang players up and said, I want to see you in 2 days' time at 2 p.m. in my office. And they said, I can't make that. Yeah. You what? He said, I can't make that. I'm in Manchester. I said, what do you mean you can't make it? He said, I can't make it. He said, I'm back to training on whatever date it was, in July or something. I said, okay, if you don't make it, that'll be 2 weeks' wages fine. And don't even think about appealing, because I'll make it 4 weeks. You can keep going, and every time you're not here, you're going to get extra fine. I had one of their players' sisters, believe it or not, a sister, rang me and said, you fine in 2 weeks' wages, we're going to take you to court and all that sort of stuff. That was the culture of the football club. So I made them come back training early, and they didn't like me. So I got rid of them all.
Oof. It's interesting. I obviously don't know, not being a manager or anything, but you must get. Is that sort of a rarity for you to get called by family members like that, or does that happen more than the outsider as a fan would think?
I've had a couple of ring me. Deal with it. Part of life, isn't it? It's all part of life.
Isn't it? This is one, when I was researching your old clubs that you've managed, this is one of the more interesting ones that I picked out due to just the madness of it and the shortness of it, in the sense that your move to Leicester in 2007, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but from the reports I've read, it seems there was a breakdown with the chairman, Milan Mandaric. There was some sort of weird episodes, in a sense, with signings that did or didn't happen, with the likes of Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank and Derek Riacard. I think I probably said that wrong. But he was from Celtic, and it seemed both of you wanted different things from the reports. It seemed like Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank was a player that a fee had been agreed for, but then you, when he arrived, said the medical wasn't happening. And as far as Derek from Celtic goes, you refused to put in an offer to Celtic, and that the relationship between yourself and the chairman just seemed to just decline, and sort of went to a point where it's sort of unsavable, and your contract was actually terminated only, I think, 3 or 4 games in, wasn't it, in the 29th of August. So what do you think that breakdown in communication was down to exactly? And what if, say what you can, if you can't say it then that's fine, but say as much as you can as a sense about the situation with Hasselbank and the Celtic player, and if this is all true to be breakdown in communication. Of course, correct me if I'm wrong if it isn't.
That's right, I think that's the best thing I like now. Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, yeah, he tried to sign him. He'd met him in London, invited him up to Leicester to do a medical. He was staying in the same hotel as what I was. I saw him when I left the hotel to go to the training ground, something like 7:45 in the morning. Him and all his mates and friends and all that. And I don't really know Jimmy, but I shook his hand and said hello. And he said, is everything okay? I said, well, I don't even know you're coming here. But he said, what? He said, I don't even know you're signing for us. And it had been 6 months since Jimmy had played another game. His previous match was at Charlton in central midfield, and he got took off at half time. And I repeated that to the chairman, and we already had 5 centre forwards. We had 44 players at Leicester. He'd signed probably about 8 of them himself in the summer. Not me, I didn't sign those players.
Did you say 44 players?
Yeah, 44 players. players.
How on earth do you manage that?
44 players.
How can you manage a team of 44 players?
How did I handle it?
Yeah, the amount of players like that is like, obviously it's going to be impossible to make everyone happy. How do you sort of go around managing a team of that many players?
You can't.
Well, exactly.
Not the amount of staff we had. The three of us were up there. It was mission impossible. There was absolutely no way. But the fact of the matter is, the chairman had signed these players. We played a pre-season friendly away from home against a little non-league club. Pardon the use of the word non-league. We lost, and he was knocking on the door in the dressing room after the game. Martin, what's wrong? What have we got here? What have you done to the goalkeeper? I said, I didn't want him. You chose him, you bought him, you paid for him, and you put him on stupid wages. I said, you'll just have to get on, that's what we've got. I said, I didn't want him. He said, what about this one? I said, you signed him. The players he signed weren't good enough. And I'm left to carry the can. And then when it came to the first few games of the season, I think we were sixth in the league when I left. I played all the players I wanted to play, and I didn't pick none of these players. And when you don't pick any of these players, then it don't go down well. And the previous home game, we beat Watford, who were top of the league at the time, 80 Boothroyd's Watford. There was 25,000, I think, in the stadium. We won 4-1, beating the top of the league team, moved up to sixth in the league, and he sacked me 4 days later. There was no way that I was going to work for a chairman like that, and there was no way I was going to pick all these players just to keep him happy. I thought for my own personal moral compass that I would pick and do what I thought. And if I remind you back to my first game at Barnet,
Yeah.
I left out centre forward, I left out an England centre forward, I left out a player that was worth at the time about 400,000, and I did it for what I thought was best for the team, and I wasn't going to change my mind. And it's the same principle I had when I was at Leicester. I wasn't going to change for them, and I wasn't going to start doing things that he wanted to do. And then after that, there was no way that was ever going to work. I was lucky I lasted that long.
There's definitely the one regret in your career, if you had one, was probably taking that job, considering how it obviously worked out. I suppose it's easy to say in hindsight, but moving on to 2008-9, you were at Cheltenham, a club managed by your father, as you mentioned earlier, but that was between, I believe, 1974 and 79?
Yeah, that's it, yeah, I'm Cheltenham fan.
Yep. So what was the appeal of Cheltenham, obviously? Was there more of an appeal considering your dad was there before, or...?
Yeah, that was definitely one of the main reasons. I've been there, I used to go there every home game. I used to go and train there on a Thursday night when I was a little boy. No, the team was awful. They'd lost a lot of games before I got there. I was brought in to be the big turnaround, but the players weren't up to it. It was probably the wrong move for me to make at the time to go there. And it's taken them a long time to get over it and recover from it, really. But no, it was a disappointing spell for me. In fact, I was a Cheltenham Town supporter. Made it even harder.
Yeah, there was a lot of financial and squad troubles at Cheltenham, and you ended up having to put essentially everyone up for sale, wasn't it? Which is quite a bizarre situation to be in. But how was that, going through that, knowing you had to basically put the whole squad up for sale and try and make the best of what you had?
I didn't know. The chairman walked across the training pitch one morning, got all the players together, me included, and the staff. We all stood on the training pitch. I didn't know. He had a suit on and a shirt and tie, obviously. Smart chap. And he said, everybody, I've got to tell you, we're on the verge of going into administration, and everybody right now is available. Everybody.
Yeah.
So all the players looked at me. All the players couldn't wait to get off the pitch to go and speak to their agent. And all their agents instead of ringing me and ringing the chairman, God bless him. And no, it proved to be partially the Nurofen days, that's for sure.
So was obviously you left your role there in December, and obviously given the issues we just talked about, it seemed like it was a pretty impossible job in some aspects to make it work. And given the time you had at Leicester before, was that those two jobs there a bit of a sticky period for you in your management career where nothing seemed to go for you at that specific point before you obviously went and got yourself back on track after that Cheltenham time?
Where was it after Cheltenham?
Barnet.
Oh, yeah.
If you just ask that question,
Yeah,
it's probably a 1 in 5
I've
chance it's
got
Barnet.
to say, you've got 24,000 people giving your team a standing ovation, having beaten Watford 4-1, who were top of the league. I had good things going there at Leicester. That team got relegated that season, and we were 6th in the league when I left. I had some good players there, by the way, some good players, and I had a few other good players lined up to have come in, but unfortunately I wasn't allowed to sign them. If I was allowed to sign what I wanted to sign, I could have had a decent team, and it would have taken time to get rid of all the periphery extra players. None of them do very well anywhere else. It would have taken time, but I've got to say, the money I earned was unbelievable at that point, and it was something I had to do. It was purely for money, not for the owner.
No. Well, now you're on that subject, it's out of interest, if you're allowed to say, what sort of names were you looking at when you were at Leicester to improve that team that you weren't allowed to get in?
There's a goalkeeper that I wanted to sign called Paddy Kenny.
Yeah, went on to Sheffield United, had a good career, didn't he?
Yeah, him. And I also wanted to sign the goalkeeper that was from West Brom. Not the tallest. He's now a goalkeeper coach. What's his name? I wanted a senior goalkeeper that had seen it and done it at the top level, who lived in that area, English, to come and play. What was his name? Dean Kiley. That's the one. I wanted him to come in and play. Instead of that, we never had a decent team, but God bless him.
Yeah.
Keith Andrews. I wanted to sign Keith Andrews.
Back from MK Dons.
I signed him from on a free transfer from Hull. He went on to play for Ireland. Went on to play in the World Cup and the Euros. He was a fantastic player. When I told them that I wanted to sign him, they thought I was a joke taking a player from the second division. Ridiculous.
Yeah. So, well, it's not bad targets, to be fair. Paddy Kenny went on to have a good career. Obviously, he made Keith Andrews at MK Dons. He had a great career there. Just a shame that, as you say, the relationship with the chairman just wasn't one that was workable in the end. But you moved back to Barnet for, I think, your second spell, if I'm right in keeping up with that, maybe third. That was in 2011 on an 8-game contract. But again, you left before the end of that to go and join Notts County. This is the second time you've left Barnet before the end of the season to go and join another side, and that obviously was Notts County. Pardon?
Where did I go from there?
You went to Notts County.
Oh, crikey, yeah. Big club, Notts County.
Yeah.
Big move, that one.
Yeah, obviously massive, given, Nottingham Derby, which you never probably see again, but that was a great occasion. Notts County, a big club, especially in the league they're in now, down in the National League. The club is far too big for that division, in my opinion, anyway. So you went there from Barnet with 3 games left to join Notts County, and obviously you had Stuart Nelson, Notts County at the time, I believe. Obviously you'd worked with at Brentford, and when you went to Notts County, you avoided relegation there. You won Manager of the Month for September 2011 with 4 wins and 1 draw in that 5 games, and then it sort of went a bit negatively in the end. You got sacked in February 2012 from Notts County, but obviously, I know we could talk about Notts County for a while, but you know what's coming next after that, don't you? If you can remember.
What?
Who'd you join after Notts County?
Go on, you tell me.
I'm going to guess your 5th spell at Barnet. No, it was, of course. No, it wasn't. That's a long way to go yet. You obviously joined Gillingham after that, and it's taken us a while to get into Gillingham, actually. I've had such a good time discussing your career in management and playing career up to that, but this is where all the good stories come out.
That Notts County one.
Yep.
Because I'm sure a lot of football fans are going to listen to this.
I hope so.
The chairman at Notts County was a top guy.
Yeah.
I really got on well with him. He had a lot of work in Cyprus with his bank and whatever he ran in Cyprus. And so his wife started to take over. His wife.
Yeah.
And, oh my God, my life changed completely. It was an absolute nightmare. Questioned about this, questioned about that, told that I had to go to weekly meetings, absolutely checking every substitution, who's injured, who's not injured, who's training, who's not training, why are we doing this, why are we doing that. It was constant. I am not at my best when it's like that.
No, surely all manager wants is control of his own team.
Oh my God, when that happened at Notts County, my whole life changed, and I loved it at that club. The people up there, the supporters up there, the passion of the people. If only they knew what went on behind the scenes, they would have thought
I actually said Gillingham was next, and I said Barnet as a joke before, but you actually did have another spell at Barnet between Notts County and Gillingham. Yeah, I just missed out when I was going to talk about Gillingham. But you went to Barnet April 2012, a couple of months after you left Notts County, replacing Laurie Sanchez, and you obviously had that. This is going to be a good one to talk about actually from your point of view, because you had the euphoria of staying up on the last day of the season. You finished 22nd that year, stayed up on the final day with a 2-1 win away at Burton Albion, I believe. Obviously, this is your third spell at the club at this point, and how where does that day rank in keeping the side you've been at twice already up in the division in the final day of the season? Where does that rank in your career highlights so far?
Oh, it's got to be right up there. We went 1-0 down away at Burton. We had about 3,500 Barnet supporters, maybe 4,000 at Burton away, Saturday afternoon, boiling hot day. We've all been there that precious day on the last game of the season. They've gone 1-0 up, and they got a penalty just before half time, Burton. You stood as a manager in that technical area, knowing if it goes 2-0, you ain't going to get back from that. And Zola, the centre forward, not the
not the Italian,
the other one. he gets the ball and spots it. Our Barnet fans are behind the goal. He's hit this penalty as you've ever seen a ball get kicked and it's smashed into the scoreboard behind the goal above the stand. 1-0 down at half time. What a relief. When they came in at half time, they had frozen. The players had frozen. To explain what that means is the nervous energy overcame their bodies and they couldn't run, they couldn't drive, they just couldn't function. As a manager, you can either coax them out of it or try and coax them out of it, or did that day, God bless. I was raging, as you can probably imagine.
Yeah.
The shirt was soaking wet, I had a tank top on soaking wet, that was all off, and I was stood in front of them all, challenging every one of them to a fight, and then challenging all of them to a fight, calling them every name under the sun, and then I kicked out one good player and called him all sorts of names under the sun and accused him of bottling it, which is a big word in any shape or form, in any life. I didn't talk to him anymore. They went out and played in the second half. Oh my God, that player that I was talking about was absolutely brilliant. And then when the goal went in with about 10 minutes to go, our volley from the penalty spot into the bottom corner, oh my God, the euphoric moment was unbelievable. When the final whistle went in about the 95th minute, after a Burton corner had been headed in towards the top corner of the Barnet goal, our goalkeeper fingertipped it over the crossbar. Oh my God, it was going in the top corner for 2-2 and we'd been down. It was the most amazing feeling. And it takes days and days and days to get over it. It's exhausting. It's a relief, but it's exhaustion, happiness. And it's a maddest feeling you could ever think of.
Must have nearly given you a heart attack that game.
Oh God, yeah. But it's the same with the Notts County one. We had Brighton at home, last game of the season, managed by that guy who used to play for Tottenham, a good player at Chelsea.
Ooh, Poyet.
All smart. Yeah, they're top of the league and they played all beautiful football out from the back and all that sort of stuff. And we absolutely ramped after them, Notts County. Again, we had one for about 19 games when I got there. And we beat Brighton at home on the last day of the season to stay up. Unbelievable.
I suppose that's we obviously you've had your name tag in your career as a manager, as everyone's seen you as apart from when you obviously won promotion with the club will go on to your next. People do see you as a manager. You want him there if you're in trouble of relegation. Martin Adams is the man you come to. Is that sort of like the two spells at Notts County and Barnet we managed to keep up on the last day? Did you start to think yourself as like, I'm pretty good at this last day malarkey?
Yeah, my life changed. It's a bit dramatic. I've got a very clever son, very bright boy, academic, and very astute. And I had a chat with him one day, and he said, said, you're known now just as a firefighter. He said, you need to think and you need to work out how you're going to do something to be at the other end of the table, not just fighting relegation and getting teams out of it. You need to work out how you are going to change to get a team. He said, because that's the only thing that's missing off your CV. He said, you've had good cup runs, you found good players and sold them for a lot of money on lower levels. He said, now, to top it all off, you need to win something, to do something, and a promotion. When he said that to me, he don't say too much, my son, but when he does, you kind of listen.
Mm.
And so it's from that, really, I started to get myself together and thinking that Gillingham job, when that came along, how was I going to do it? What was I going to do differently? How was I going to approach it mentally differently? How was I going to manage the people differently? It took a lot of work, and a new plan of what we were going to do at Gillingham. And my God, it worked beautifully.
Just before you joined Gillingham, I was interested because I wanted to know this for a while. Were there any other offers before you eventually decided to join us? Did anyone else come in for you? And if so, what separated Gillingham from those clubs?
You hear rumours and get phone calls, but it doesn't always materialise in anything.
No.
Would you be interested? Would you be interested? What would you think of this? Do you think this would be a good one? What would you do? How would you do this? And some of them, I don't want to move house anymore, so I've had them recently. And at the time, it's kind of, I wouldn't say it got a bit more fussy, but as I've got a little bit older, when I was younger, I had to work, had to work. I'm not saying I can't, get by without working now. I can, I still have to work, but it had to be right. And with that Gillingham one, when I heard rumours about that one, but just through agents, nothing from Mr. Stalin. When it all came about, it was just, I was fresh, I was ready, and I was excited, and I knew all the players that I could take into Gillingham that could help it be successful.
Yeah, you brought in essentially a whole new spine that made that team, in my opinion anyway, so successful. Stuart Nelson you worked with at Notts County, of course, he came in. Adam Barrett, natural leader from his promotions at Southend, brought him in from Bournemouth. Dion Burton, of course, you've managed before. He was brought in at the age of 35. Charlie Allen, your son, also brought in from Notts County. Ben Strevens, another experienced player from Wickham. And then Miles Weston, of course, who was fantastic that year. I think he's actually, looking back at it, one of the most underrated players of that season, in all honesty. Because people looked to obviously like Kedders and whatnot for the goals and Barrett for the leadership at the back. But I thought Weston was incredible that season, but we'll get on to him. He came in from Brentford, of course, and then in the January... Yeah, so I was about to say he came in January.
Did he?
Yeah. Remember, he came in January, and his first game was away at Southend. I'm pretty certain Chris Welpdale scored in the first 5 minutes. I think this is in January, New Year's Day. And then nothing else happened, and we won the game 1-0. I'm pretty certain that was Leon's debut, yeah. And Stephen Gregory also come in that January as well. Look through the loans. Of course, he brought back Cody McDonald. He was obviously a fan's favourite at the time. Antonio German came in. Tom Flanagan started the season on loan, as did Robbie Finley. I think Roman Vansalo joined midway through, and so did Anton Robinson. There's a lot of players to get through here. I forgot about most of them. But, yeah. So this was the first title we'd won in 50 years, and I'll say this to you now as a fan. I'm sure everyone reciprocate. I'm 21 now. We won promotion at Wembley in 2009. I remember that, obviously, and we also beat Wigan at Wembley back in the 90s, but that was a bit before my time. So I put this down as by far and away the most enjoyable season I've had supporting Gillingham. So thanks for that, first off. And it was one that I can look back at the highlights on and never get bored. The team we had that season, I was talking about this with obviously the players that are in it, lots of Adam, Matt and Stuart, and they all knew that, Nelson said that he thought he'd get promoted at the start of the campaign. You sort of said the same message actually in regards to you, they all said the first time that you all met as a team, you were insistent, you were getting promoted, and I remembered, or you wanted to get promoted, I should say. I remember your first interview actually after you got the job, and you said the challenge of taking a team from just outside the playoffs to challenging to be champions is an exciting one, and arguably not one you've been used to, especially not in recent years with the relegation battles you've been having. So, what was it about Gillingham essentially, and the challenge that excited you so much?
I thought they had some good players. They finished 8th in the league.
Yeah, 2 years in a row we did that.
Yeah, just outside the playoffs. I think they'd conceded 57 goals the season before. Conceded.
I'll take your word for it.
And it was quite clear that they needed a new goalkeeper, centre backs, and a central midfield player. Quite obvious.
Yeah.
That meant changing the holding midfield player, which was a good player, Jack Payne. He was a good player, Jack.
Yeah.
But I also knew that Jack and his agent had eyes of going elsewhere and getting a good money in, and it was big money for Jack.
Peterborough, wasn't it?
Invaded right on a free transfer on loan. That's nothing. But the deal for Jack really was a great deal for the club and for Jack, of course, because he's gone on to have a really good career. I just knew with those players, I knew all those players, and I knew what they could bring. And then obviously with the emergence of Fish, and there was Fish, Joe Martin, Welldale. Welldale I knew could score goals. I knew he would win us games, Welldale.
Yeah.
And Charlie Lee, I know he would win us games, definitely win us games. Miles Weston, I know he could help win with the pace that he's got. And then with Kedwell and Burton, I mean, that is a strong, they're strong centre forwards, mentally as well as physically, as well as skillfully.
Yeah.
We had, I would imagine those players would say that they had the hardest pre-season they've ever had. I would say that those players would say that they all believed privately, I never ever said it publicly, all I spoke about was being champion, to win the league. And we went away to France for a week, which was a brilliant experience for all of us. And all we spoke about was training to be champions. We trained at 7:30 in the morning down on the beach. So that's 7 o'clock up, down on the beach for 7:30, back to the hotel for breakfast at 8:45. And then 10 o'clock onto the nice training pitches at the training centre. Brilliant experience, and the chairman to put all this on for us. We trained from 10:30 to 12:30. And then Malcolm, the kit man, he would have gone in the morning into the local supermarket and got some French bread, tomatoes, cucumber, salad leaves, or whatever it was, ham, tomatoes, yoghurt, and cheese, and fruit. And we'd all sit on the side of the training pitch, in the dressing room, well, not on the side of the pitch, in the dressing room, making our own baguettes, and fruit, and yogurts, and bottles of water, and chilling out. The discipline, really.
Yeah.
And then from there, we'd go back to the hotel. It was only about a 500-yard walk. Sleep in the afternoon, or they weren't allowed to come out of their rooms in the afternoon. It's another discipline. And then we'd go out again. We'd go out and train again at 6 o'clock. And we'd train from 6 till 7, and then go back to the hotel, shower, and dinner was at 7:30. And then they had to be in their rooms by 9:30. No one was allowed out of the hotel. Staff included. So it was a proper discipline. But we loved it. We played board games, we played cards, we played all sorts of stupid board games. And the team spirit, team unity, and camaraderie was all about being champions. Never ever did I mention any of this to the public. It was all private, and I told them never to believe anything that I was saying to the public, and just drill your mind to be a champion.
We certainly did that, and it worked. I'm gonna run you through a few games a few of my favourite games from that season, some of the most pivotal in that season. So you'd obviously just come off the back of beating Bristol City 2-1 in your League Cup. You come into the first game of the season at Priestfield, your first home game, of course, as manager. We host Bradford City at home. Danny Kedwell scores an audacious first goal that game. That little I think someone managed to chip the keeper from an almost impossible angle on the right hand side.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, still to this day I'm not sure how he got that so spot on. And then he scores a penalty in the second half. I think Naki Wells pulls one back for them before Miles rounds it off in just injury time, I think. And even though it was the first game, that's sort of the time where I remember me and my friends who went at the time, and then you see a lot on social media at that time. They look at that just in one game and think we've got a team here. We were that impressive, and Bradford it was a good Bradford side at that time, of course. And as I mentioned there, Naki Wells, obviously a championship player now, he's obviously had a bit of pedigree about him then. And we just knew there's something on that opening day. I don't know what it was, and I suppose it's easy to say now if I just come out and say I knew we'd be champions that day because it obviously happened, but I didn't think that. I just knew that this team had something about it, and it's something that we perhaps lacked in the last 2 years, and this comes from the players you brought in. I think you didn't just bring in numbers, you brought in players that made the difference, and I think of the likes of Adam Barrett, who was so solid that season, and I think the likes of Dion Burton, who come in and did the same job he's been doing his whole career, and that's putting the ball in the back of the net. And I think him and Kedda's got about I think it was 29 goals between them that season, I think, which goes to show how good a partnership it is. And I just remember that Bradford game, it stays with me for some reason, not just because of the manner of the goal Kedwell scored, but it's because I believed early on that we were en route to doing something, and that was obviously coming off the back of a great win in the League Cup prior against Bristol City. So talk me through what your emotions are, and knowing it's your first home game as the manager, and what are you thinking? I know obviously we know you don't get nerves at this point from what we've spoken about so far, but what was the excitement levels like when you're walking out onto Priestfield for the first time?
Well, the gamble that I've taken had started many weeks before. From the conversation I had with my son about being a relegation fighter, 4-4-2, hard to beat, combative, difficult, like I was brought up with George Graham's youth team at QPR, I changed. And I've done something different, which is a massive gamble. I played a formation, 4-1-3-2. And I explained it to the players in the players' lounge at Priestfield on a flip chart, and this is how we're going to play. By playing this way, it would allow our fullbacks, Martin and Fish, to bomb forward and overlap as often as possible if we manage to make some passes in the middle of the pitch. If we make no passes in the middle of the pitch where we get an overload of players, because we've got 4 in there, it'll allow our fullbacks to get forward. The players looked to me and weren't sure. And then one morning, I put on the notice board in the players' dressing room, today we're doing defending. When we went up to the training pitch, all we did was passing of the ball. I've never done this before, never. All we did was passing, playing through the holding midfield player, playing through the Whelpdale on the right, and on the left it was Weston, and then in midfield, well, I think we had Wright in midfield. Who was the attacking midfield? Maybe Charlie Lee. All we did was pass the ball around between the players. When we finished the training session, Adam Barrett came over. He said, Gaffer, he said, I thought we were doing defending today. I said, yes, just have. He went, what? I said, that was the defending session, Adam. And there was a pause. I said, Adam, if we pass the ball, they can't score. If we play, they can't score. That's defending. All right? Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. And I walked off. Pretty arrogant. So we had to go and relay that back to all the other players. And I stuck by it, and I stayed with that. And it wasn't until the last couple of months of the season where it started to get a bit edgy, and it was getting a bit tense and a bit tight. And we'd lost Wright, obviously, because he didn't get his loan putting in time, but we struggled a little bit. We didn't quite have that fluency, which happens at all clubs at that time of year, always does. So
Yeah, it's impossible to go for a whole season without a little blip. So it's almost impossible for a team, no matter how good your whole seasons, go through the whole campaign without a slight blip at some point. It's just natural, isn't it?
Yeah, well, as you know, we were 7 points clear for most of the season.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think we were top of the league for the whole season. How many clubs do you see top of the league for the whole season?
Liverpool.
Normally they fade and they wobble. We didn't. We stayed with it. We changed our way of playing a little bit to be a little bit more direct when it came to the last couple of months, which is standard practice. All clubs, all managers, all players do it. It's normal. But no, the way we played and our way we wanted to play, Fish and Joe Martin were absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. They were, oh my God.
Chipped him with a few goals as well, didn't they?
You can't, just reminded me when you talk about the way game at Bristol City, they were in a division above us, weren't they?
Yeah.
We absolutely slaughtered them. They were easy. It was like playing against kids. And it was like they couldn't get near us. They didn't know to mark because Whelpdale wasn't playing wide, he was playing inside. We had extra players in midfield and we were passing the ball around them. As a manager, I've never ever done that. Fullback, get the ball down the channels, or it on a big diagonal, and then get up the pitch, win the knockdown, get it wide and get across it. As basic as that. This was different. I was watching something completely different to what I'd ever done before. I loved it. I knew we'd be champions. I knew it. No one could get near us. No way.
We absolutely... In some games that season, I think about Bristol Rovers at home, Aldershot at home, and even some games just 1-1-0. It just felt as though at some points the game was over after 5 minutes because we were absolutely suffocating teams. They could not get out to save their lives. They were just camped inside their own half because we wouldn't allow them to play. We would just suffocate the life out of them. And they couldn't get out. And it was almost like we're watching the game as fans and like 5 minutes in we think, yeah, we're winning this one even if we haven't scored yet, because it's the amount of pressure we put teams under. And the fact is, people came to Priestfield knowing they weren't going to be allowed to play and they'd have to put in a hell of a performance to get something out of that. And more times than not, they're left with nothing. And that obviously was proven because we won our first, I think it was our first 10 games, wasn't it? We won the league and we were absolutely flying. And then I think we lost to Rochdale at home. I think it was 2-1 that day. And that was our first loss, but we bounced straight back from it. And it's just that mentality the whole way through the season that you've gelled into the players. Even thinking back to that story you were telling about, everyone having to be locked inside their hotel rooms at a certain time. It's that sort of leadership you had where people know their role straight away. Where even a deficit like a loss, as rare as it was that season, made no real impact. And the next game I want to bring you to is the home game against Port Vale, when I think we were first, they were second, and they beat us that day to go above us. And that was a pretty big crowd that day at Priestfield. We knew, even though that the title obviously wasn't going to be decided on that day, but we knew how big a game it was, and we came up short that day. Kedwell scored another great goal that day, a little chest turn volley. But even though we lost that game, like the emotions after it must have been disappointment, but it must have been the message, I suppose, of keep doing what you've done all season to get us where it was. And we went on to win the next game and they lost there, so it's like that game never happened. It's just that mentality that once we were down, you knew we weren't going to stay down, we were going to straight back up again. So what do you think in terms of like mentally for the players and the management team that season? What made you all so strong and made you believers in yourself in a sense?
Okay, you ready for this?
Go on.
When I was 8 years old, playing in park football in Reading, it was drilled into me by my dad. So the stories that I told you earlier in this nice chat we're having on this rainy day in this lockdown, they all came from when I was a little boy. Deal with it. Deal with it. Deal with it. The abuse, the dog's abuse I used to get when I was a little boy that I spoke to you about earlier. The setbacks of losing a game. I lost the cup final when I was 8, playing an under-11s football against a team called Crowmarsh. And I remember going in the dressing room after the game and crying behind the door. I was only a little boy. I'm crying because I've lost. I've never ever thought I'd lose. Never. To lose that game, I can remember the feeling now. The manager had to take me outside to my dad and say, look, he's too upset. I hated losing. I hated it. And I was in it. I was like it when I was a little kid. But with that group of players, I knew that we'd have setbacks. That was the only time of the whole season that they went top, wasn't it, when they beat us?
Yeah, only for a week, mind.
Yeah, but the game that they beat us,
yeah,
it was only because the referee blew early.
Mm.
They just run out of time. They were lucky.
I just remember that game, and we knew what was riding on it. But we, as I said just before, we knew that a setback isn't one that, you know, past Gillingham sides in that position, a loss like that might have suffered them too much, and they might have fallen off the board. But we knew with that squad there was something, like the leaders in that team, like the Barretts and Nelsons. We knew that they won't take that and just let that one game define how their season's going to finish, because we could have easily, with a weaker mentality, lost that game and then have it affect the rest of our season. We could have finished in the playoffs or maybe even lower, but we stuck with it and we were top again the week later following Port Vale's loss, I think, and we won the game. And another game I want to bring you to, this is probably I'd say it's definitely up there with one of my favourites. I'm sure it's going to be one of yours as well. So that game when we played Torquay at home, that was a nice day, wasn't it? Nice sunny day at Priestfield. We knew what was at stake that day, and all the hard work paid off. I've asked a few players this, and I won't tell. I'll tell them what they said after you give me your answers to see if it matches up. But going into that game, knowing that we needed a win for promotion against Torquay, what was your final message to the players before walking out there?
I didn't give any messages to them.
That's what they said.
I didn't do that. Don't do no team talks. Malcolm done the team talks, the kit man.
Yeah.
When I read in the summer that the All Blacks, the rugby All Blacks from New Zealand coach said, I don't do team talks because the team talks are done on the training pitch through the week. He said, it's old-fashioned to think about a team talk. He said, there's no way I'm doing that sort of stuff anymore. That's old-fashioned. So I'm sure every player will tell you, I've never done any Churchill-type speeches to get things drilled or push messages out. It was all done on the training pitch. It was been done for months and months and months. They all knew what they were doing. I didn't say anything. I'd just sit in the corner or just find something to sit on the coach. I just didn't do anything. I just left them to it. They knew what they were doing. And Malcolm, this is quite, people think it's funny, but Malcolm, our kit man, who lives just around the corner from the stadium, old milkman, great spirit and a great character, I'd say, Malcolm, 1:30, come in and do the team talk. And he would come in and he'd write his notes on his little piece of paper. And he'd say, today, boys, I want you to enjoy it. Be proud of being a Gillingham player. We are going to be champions and you are going to take us there. I love every one of you. I'm so proud to be kit man and look after you all. And the players would love it. And I would love it. Malcolm was the man. And even when we played Torquay on that big day, he didn't overdo it. Just do the job and carry on doing what we've been doing all the way through.
He's still is a man, still our kit man now, and hopefully he'll be doing it for as long as he's got left working there. I think he's a legend in his own right at the club, Malcolm. He's been there for so long.
Do you know what happened with Malcolm?
Pardon?
Do you know what happened with Malcolm in France?
No.
This has been kept secret, but I'm going to reveal all now.
All right, go on.
When we were in pre-season in France, I think I told you, we was over there for a week, and we were getting towards the end of our week. And sometimes you can play a little game, which you've got in a 30 by 30 square, 6 players on the outside of the square, say in yellow bibs, 6 players in the middle, say in blue shirts, and 6 players in the middle with red shirts. So when the teams are in the middle, they're playing 6v6, but they've also got 6 on the outside that they can use about playing this passing game. And then I'll put it into a bigger area on something like half the pitch. But I needed one extra player. Well, Malcolm, the kit man, I don't know how old Malcolm is now, but he was pretty old then. Malcolm was about 10 yards behind me, having a fag on the quiet. Malcolm, here, I need an extra player. You come over here on this right wing, just in front of me, and you can just jog up and down here and be the extra red player. He put his flag out, stamped it on the grass, put on his bib, all the lads had a bit of a laugh, and I said to him, make sure no tackling on Malcolm. Anyway, after a couple of minutes, this little game's going on, and I looked to my right side, and Malcolm's legs are buckled like Elvis Presley on the dance floor.
Oh,
he
God.
fell to the ground and he fainted. He passed out. So Gary, the physio, runs over, starts slapping his face. Malcolm, come on, got some water, put some water on him. And Malcolm didn't recover. So we had to run to the main entrance to get an ambulance. And we had an ambulance coming for Malcolm thinking, God bless, he's in a bad way, do you know what I mean? A bad way. And it would have been my responsibility because I was the one that put him on there. Thankfully, after 10 minutes, Malcolm recovered. And oh my God, I have never been so happy to see someone recover. Malcolm would not go to the hospital. He stayed with us all the time. And he apologised to me for fainting. Oh my God, I was absolutely petrified. So God bless Malcolm.
It's the type of character he is. He loves the club. He loves everyone. We all love him. He's a proper legend at the club, and hopefully he's still at the club for many years to come. And just make sure you make sure he's fit to do the job next time. So yeah, back to the Torquay game. We put so much work into that season. It all came down to this. The first part of it anyway. First part of the two part plan, if you like, and we hosted Torquay at home. Danny Kedwell scores a winning goal. And my emotions during that game were, I feel like I was having a heart attack myself, because it was a bit of a, as you were saying earlier, near the end of the season, we were a bit of a tricky period. We weren't blowing teams away and stuff. We were getting the job done in some games, but some games we were a bit floundering a little bit in our performances. But this Torquay game, we got the goal early second half through Danny, and then I was starting to get the excitement in my blood, in my veins. I was ready for it. I was ready for the celebrations. Then, you know, the longer it feels like the last 5 minutes of a game like that where it's 1-0 feel like half an hour, and I believe they hit the bar in the last minute or something like that, and it felt like it was, we might just about make it, and then obviously the final whistle blows, and it was absolutely euphoric in the rain and mend. I know it's probably a bit different for yourself, because your mentality is probably like, I want to celebrate, I want to go crazy now, but you know in the back of your mind this is only part one of the challenge. You're doing yourself a disservice if you didn't then go and do part two. But what were your emotions like when that full-time whistle went? You obviously maybe couldn't celebrate as wild as you wanted to, because you knew the grand plan wasn't completely finished yet, because we weren't mathematically champions, but you must have felt immense pride and satisfaction at that point.
Oh, very proud. Do you know what? I was so proud of all those players and all the staff, John Schofield, Carl Mugson, James Russell, Gary. I was so proud, Malcolm, so proud of everybody, the way they'd all contributed. I was happy that obviously we got promoted. Happy. But when the players came in, he locked the door straight away. No one was allowed in. Everyone sat down, very quiet. And I said, well done. But I want to be a champion.
Yeah.
I want to be a champion.
Is it true you offered the first team players the opportunity to have the youth team or the fringe players play the next game, and you basically said, do you want to be champions, or shall I play the kids in the next game?
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to think everyone said they want to be champions. There wasn't that one odd one in the middle went, actually, I don't mind playing. But yeah, so as you were saying, you sat them down in the changing room, you talked to them about them wanting to be champions, and just what was the overall feel and emotion after that? Because you knew at that point that you'd done the first part of the job, as you were saying there, it's now time to finish what we came here to do.
I by this. You ready?
Yep.
It's good to go up. It's great to be a champion.
Of course.
And that was a philosophy, if you want to call it a philosophy, that I kind of used all the way through. I don't want to go up. I want to be a champion. I want to be a champion. It's just like, I just was desperate to be champion. Loads of people get promoted. Loads of them. Loads of managers get promoted. Loads of players get promoted. There's not many to be champions.
No.
And we're going to be different. And we're going to be special. And oh my God, we were.
We were. You remember you remember the team who wins promotions, but you never forget the team who wins the title. And that day came via an away game at Cheltenham, which I did go to, and we lost, so we didn't win the title that day. But I still had a good day out. Cheltenham's a nice place, I suppose. And yeah, we spoke to a couple of players. Danny Kedwell said that when I mentioned that I went to Cheltenham, he basically said, "Oh, we lost there on purpose just so we could win it at home." And I'd like to think that wasn't the truth, but I think it worked out better for everyone that we did get it done at home, and that was against AFC Wimbledon, of course, the day where we all finally got to celebrate as wildly and as enthusiastically as we wanted to without the thoughts of we've still got a job to do, because we knew it was fully done. 2-0 up at half time, I think it was. Dion Burton and Kedwell against his former club getting the goals. Happy days. We're all loving it. It's a party atmosphere in the crowd. I know for you down the dugout, you're still probably not 100% there until you know you're 100% there. In the second half, I think we only needed a point that day, I'm pretty certain. Second half, they get one back, and then you start to think that they still need 2 more goals for us to slip up a bit here. It's going to be fine. Then they get the second, then you're thinking, oh Jesus, oh no, and you start to think like, surely this isn't going to happen. And I think they came really close to actually getting a win in the end. I think they might have hit the bar or something near the end of the game, but thankfully, pardon?
They hit the post.
Yeah, hit the post, and yeah, we start to think that after all of this, it might be going to the final day again, which would have been no strange thing for you, obviously, given your last day heroics at Notts County and Barnet. But the full-time whistle was blown. The match was over. The season was the aim for the season was complete. We'd won the title. We were champions of V2 for the first time in 50 years. I think I ran on the pitch. It took me about a couple of minutes because I had to actually take in what just happened. Sort of a little moment to myself, maybe a little tear. I'm man enough to admit. And I think that it was just one of them where we finally knew what had happened, and it sort of takes a while to sort of sink in. I know there's that great video of yourself going up the dugout, looking up towards Paul Scadding, giving him the sign of approval, like, yeah, both looking at each other like, you brought me in to do a job, I've done the job, now we can all celebrate. Obviously everyone runs on the pitch, and it must have been like a whirlwind of emotion, because I spoke to some players and they said they can't even remember what it was like when the full-time whistle went, because it was so like people on the pitch straight away. I didn't really have time to really notice what had happened, just complete euphoria. And what is it like for you as a manager when that full-time whistle blows and you get the satisfaction of knowing not only are you promoted, but you are champions? The aim you wanted to do, you've achieved it.
Well, you wake up about 4:30 in the morning, and on the Saturday morning, you walk the dog.
Monty.
Yeah, God bless him. And you walk the dog again, and just try and pass the time. And then I used to take myself down to the waterfront where that swimming pool was down there.
Yeah.
And I used to walk along there just to pass the time. My mind used to be totally focused on the game. When it all finished, the last 20 minutes was difficult because the players clearly were exhausted. The nervous energy made their legs go to jelly. Nothing as a manager you can do about that.
No.
They've given everything. They knew what was ahead. And mentally, when they get into that position and that state, that's very, very difficult. We see it with top Premier League clubs and England players. It's not just our players. It happens. Part of life.
I suppose it's also key to remember, actually, it wasn't just us who had stake. Wimbledon obviously had the relegation trouble, so they needed to win as well. So it was two teams who needed the results. It wasn't exactly a dead rubber where we can just run over someone and get what we needed. So they made it a tough game as well, and obviously that aided to the jelly legs, as you say. And yeah, so carry on from what you were saying there. As I added that in.
Well, when I remind you, when the Barnet team played away at Burton,
Yeah.
in the first half, my Barnet team played with jelly legs and they could not move their legs. They did not perform. In the second half, the Barnet team did play well. Well, this is the other way round. The Gillingham team played superb in the first half, and then they knew what they had in their hands. They knew what won it was that they had in them, and the second half was just to see it through. But as soon as you do that, and as you rightly say, Wimbledon in the first half were awful. In the second half, they were superb against us, absolutely superb, but we couldn't get near them. And there was nothing I could do from the technical area. You can't make players run when their legs have gone to jelly and their mind is all fuzzy or hazy. But when it's over and the final whistle went, you know, people like, and I mentioned John Schofield and Cole Muggleton, James Russell, and all the work that we all put in. And then to see the players in the dressing room afterwards, when we got into the dressing room, it was an amazing moment.
Okay.
Amazing, never to be forgotten.
Yeah, I remember you coming into the factory as it was now. It might have been still called Blues back then, I'm not sure. But a little pub inside the ground. You came in there, did your little speech after the game, and I was there to witness that. And it was just incredible. I remember it all so well. You know, the champagne was flying. It was a very, very proud moment for the club. Very proud moment for yourself. And obviously, it's one of them where I'm never going to forget it. And you racked up the rewards of it as well. I think 3 of our players, I think it might have been Nels, Adam and Joe, got in the PFA, the E2 Team of the Year. You won the League 2 Manager of the Year. We broke the record for the most away wins in a season, and I think that was after a 1-0 win at Chesterfield, where I think Cody scored a back header from a corner that day. And we were just... It's just a season where it'd be hard to replicate, but yeah, it's one we can look on with fantastic memories. I want to talk through a couple of stories that I've heard from ex-players who've sort of done you in. I want to get your opinions on them. So,
Come on then.
So the first one's from Chris Whelpdale, and he told us a little story about how you always used to cycle from the ground to Beecham's Cross, the training ground, in the morning prior to a training session, of course. And you got there one morning, and I think you said they were doing crossing drills, of heading drills, and someone's gone up for a header. He's completely missed it. You've like a bit like you said earlier. Really, if it's almost like an mentality. If you want something done, do it yourself. Goes like the swimming thing before that Brentford game, of course, and you're showing people how it's done. You said that's not how you read the ball. You come into the penalty spot with your bike helmet, hat still on, and then they've whipped a ball into you, and you've gone flying to win the header. And apparently, this is where Nelson comes in, because I asked him about this as well, and he said you've landed like on your back and nearly dislocated your shoulder by doing it.
It's true. It's true. I ended it with the bicycle helmet on, yeah. And as I landed, oh my God, too much weight, and just took the whole thing. All the players absolutely loved it, and it took me about 10 minutes to recover. But they loved it. It made them laugh, and that's a special attribute. If you can make your people laugh, it goes a long way, I think.
Yeah, it's a shame the header didn't actually go in, apparently.
Oh, crazy times, remembering them, eh?
Yeah, we've got another one. This is just one from...
We've got another 100.
Oh, well, the ones I've only asked one from each, actually. We got one from Kedwell, and then we got one from Nelson. So Danny Kedwell said you were once... I think it was prior to an away game, and you were doing like a morning walk through this sort of like farmyard area or something, and you've walked past a donkey, and you've gone, Danny, and you pointed to a donkey, and you said, Danny, what are you doing over there?
True.
And he said all the players were looking at Danny thinking he's going to go off on one here, because he said he didn't want to give you the satisfaction at the time.
True. I had that relationship with them. I promise you, I had that because of the different style of play, and I'd also seek a lot of help after Notts County about managing myself privately and publicly, and with staff of men. I called me one day Uncle. And I couldn't think of a better description how I would want to be for a football team nowadays. No players, no group of players has ever called me an uncle type figure. They would have always said to me, they said hard taskmaster, tough, nasty, on top of them all the time, in fear. That lot weren't in fear. Well, I had a great relationship with all of them.
Yeah, we saw that. It just seemed the relationship throughout that time is like so tight knit. It's also like you were a manager, like you're prepared to have all the banter with the players. But once it was time to work, it was time to work, and that balance is sort of what makes the team so successful in some senses. We'll go through a couple now, a couple of last ones. This isn't a story I was told, it's just one that's pretty much common knowledge to anyone who's seen a video. If I mention Scunthorpe at home in the FA Cup, do you know where I'm going with that?
No, but I know you're going to tell me. Yes, I do know, and I know what you're going to tell me. Go on.
So I think Scunthorpe making a substitution. You've attempted to walk down about 4 stairs. I think it was actually to bark out orders wearing your bright red Santa Claus trousers, and then
where did the Santa Claus trousers come from?
Pardon?
Where's the Santa Claus trousers come from?
Your wardrobe, I assume.
But what's it got to do with Santa Claus?
There's not. You've got to give me a minute. And then you've come walking down the stairs, and you've completely stacked it. To be fair to you, you've gone way off the mark, and the way you are, it just doesn't surprise me at all. You fall straight on the floor, and then you get straight up nonchalantly as if nothing's ever happened, like looking up in the air, assuming like someone else has done it and it's not you. And it's just one of them small moments of comedy you can take. I think we were 4-0 up at the time, or 3-0 up. We were coasting either way, and it was just one of them light relief moments of that I remember from seeing the video. And last one Stuart Nelson told us is something to do with you leaving jelly babies on the floor and then going to pick them up and then eating them, and then one day they've planted jelly babies on the floor to sort of like maybe trick you into going getting them, and then pulled one of them away, so you looked a bit silly at the end.
I used to drop wine gums. Malcolm used to get me a box of wine gums, and I used to eat nervously. And sometimes I'd drop the wine gums and they'd fall onto the dirty floor, and I would just pick them up as though nothing had happened and start eating them. But they all used to smile, and it used to make them laugh. That's why I did it. So yeah, that is true. Nelson, did he pull them away? If I was in a rage, he wouldn't have probably dared pull them away. Going back to the trousers, why did I do that? Who did we play in that game? We won, didn't we? In a cup game, wasn't it?
Scunthorpe.
They division above us.
Yeah, they were.
I told the players that Scunthorpe was shit. I was allowed to say that.
It's all right.
Crap, and that we would beat them, and that they could go out and express themselves and play great football. They're rubbish. Just they're rubbish.
It definitely worked.
When we got to the game, they all come in at 1:30, and they all start getting changed, and Malcolm would normally do his team talk about 20 to 2. So I came into the dressing room just after 1:30 with my white t-shirt on and red trousers, my smart black shoes, and they all just looked up and laughed. They just thought it was hilarious. And I said, hold on a minute, if you're going to go out onto the dance floor, you've got to put some sort of effort in, and you've got to put the gear on to get on the dance floor and show that you can play good football. And this is why I've got my dance gear on. Now you get out and play. When that happened, and that came out on the video, all the players thought it was hilarious. And the subs and the people that are sitting around me in the technical area, they thought it was hilarious. But what they don't know, even to this day, when I went down, I took a proper hit. Because you can imagine your body weight, you know, when you go down, your body weight, it hurts. And I took one across my knee, and underneath my knee, it was bleeding, and it was sore, but those trousers were too tight. I couldn't do nothing, and I couldn't walk off and get instant treatment, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was a bloody nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare. But yeah, that's why I wore them. And when I came out past the corner flag, out into the stadium, I didn't walk along the pathway, I walked out onto the pitch. And again, it was a message to the supporters. We we are good. We can wear anything. It was a positive, not a scaredy attitude. It was like I can walk with confidence, proud of my players, knowing how well they're going to play. And they're going to entertain the Gillingham fans this afternoon. And my God, what a performance that was against Scunthorpe. We absolutely battered them, I think.
Yep, 4-0. I'm trying to think of the goal score off the top of my head. I think Kedda's got one from the penalty spot. I think Adam Birchall got the fourth. I want to say Joe Martin got one. Maybe Miles Weston as well. I'll have to look that up at some point. But we're just before we move on to the following season, which was your final season at Gills, or half season. I just want to know, obviously, where does that season rank? Is it potentially your biggest ever achievement in your managerial career?
What, Gillingham being champions?
Yep.
Oh, it's the number one since I started playing when I was 8. When I lost that cup final when I was 8 and cried behind the door, first ever cup final, lost it. To go on and to be a champion, a manager of a champions team, it's been the best year of my whole career, including my football career, which was a good career considering I was just an okay player. I wasn't a great player. It was just that season was quite unbelievable. I had so much belief in the players, my staff, the supporters I thought were awesome behind the team, the atmosphere that we created. It's just unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. What we did was unbelievable.
It really was. On a team of basically...
You know what I'm looking forward to, Owen?
What?
What I'd like, I haven't done it yet. I've done it back at Brentford. I haven't been back yet. Priestfield.
I think there should be something for the 10-year anniversary of it. That'd be 2023. That seems a bit long. I think we should invite the squad back at some point, definitely, to watch us win a game. Hopefully win a game anyway. I think Fishy said that the other day as well, that he's hoping to be invited back with the rest of the team to, celebrate what it was. I think you'd be welcome back with open arms by literally everyone. Fan favourite here, of course.
I've got a couple of friends where I lived at Gillingham supporters, and we always reminisce and talk about the time, like we have done this afternoon. They go to him and his daughter. They go to a lot of Gillingham games, so they keep me up to date with what's happening. And he always said to me, "When are you going to come back to a game? When are you going to come back to a game?" And I would love to come back to Priestfield and relive a day and enjoy the moment, I guess.
You should get in contact with Paul Scally. We'll make that happen. As soon as we get over this virus, first game back, we'll get you a seat sorted. Don't you worry about that. Now, we need to move on because we've been on the phone for like 2 and a bit hours now. I said it'd be 2 hours for you, but we'll finish on talking about your final season at Gillingham, and then we'll do some Twitter questions. Cause I don't want to keep you massively long. I already have, but time flies and all that. Yeah. So, following season, we only won. I think it was 2 out of our first 11 games. You brought in. It's a good set of players. I think we've got Cody McDonald permanently. Akin Fenway was also previously at the club before he came back and rejoined his partnership with Cody. This season's a bit of a weird one to me for the time you were there anyway, because throughout Paul Scally's reign, he's been known to give managers quite a lot of time. Some he didn't deserve it in my opinion, but that's for another time. And I feel like when you were sacked in October, and I think a lot of Gillingham fans think this way as well, we think you weren't given enough time. I think October in the start of a new season is no time really, and I think I want to get your viewpoint on why the season didn't necessarily start as well as it should have done, because you think the key thing after a promotion is that you start the season the same way you ended the last one. But I suppose in this funny sense, actually, that's kind of what we did, because our form at the end of last season, towards the end of it, wasn't the greatest, and maybe we went off our roots perhaps because, I don't want to say we were a long ball team, but we like playing the balls up down the wings and wide to Kedders and Dion Burton, and that seemed to work for us. And I think Rotherham had a similar thing where they punted it forward to Ravel, and they obviously got promoted that season in League One. So maybe we changed the way we played, and it to sort of suit the division, it didn't quite work out. So what was your thoughts on why the season didn't particularly start as well as you'd hoped?
I should not have bought in. Bottom line, that's it. The owner has a choice to do whatever he wants to do. It's his money. It's his money. And if he decides that's the way forward for him and his club, I always have to respect it, and I always do.
Yeah.
He never interfered with any player recruitment. He never interfered with players coming in or going out. The one player he helped me with, he suggested to get in was Cody McDonald. When I was looking for centre forward for January, Mr. Scally suggested Cody McDonald. I didn't really know Cody, so I've always publicly credited Mr. Scally with that one. I was open, of course, to the owner's suggestions on players here and there. But on team selection, players in and out, he never, ever interfered. Of course, with the run that we had, he wasn't happy. And as the games went on, the team weren't playing well. And when the team's not playing well, the way it's Shrewsbury, we didn't play great. Cody had a good chance of about 3 or 4 yards. He sacked me the next day, and that's life. In the job that I'm in, that is life. I've spoken to him since, so I've got no problem with him. I ain't got no problem with anyone at the club. It's just the life I've had, that is what it's been like. I don't think, in all honesty, I'm ever going to be a manager that's going to stay somewhere for about 5 or 6 years. Probably not my style. But that's life. I'm happy with what I did. I love what I did. And for all the years I've been in it, how old am I now? 42. No, 55.
Close.
55, for all the years I've been doing it, which is like 23 years now as a coach, on and off. And then all that time as a player, being the manager of Gillingham as the champions, never to be forgotten. Still got my medal now. It's in my bedside cabinet. I don't look at it every night, but it's there. It's like, it's precious.
So, of course, it was a difficult League One that year as well. I remember a press conference from you after a game. I think we'd lost 4-0 at Wolves, and the report was mentioning about, I think it was some guy called Sigurdsson, some Icelandic fellow who was worth about 2.5 million at the time. You know, Kevin Doyle was worth about 4 million. It was just sort of the numbers that, I think when you heard that yourself, you couldn't quite believe it, could you? Those are the sort of calibre players and the sort of wages we were up against in that division.
Yeah, that's fine, but that's part of life, isn't it? You know, you're going to go up into that division, there's going to be clubs that have got mega money. I think the fella you're talking about was about 5.5 million. He was centre forward, Asmasson or someone, loads of S's in his name, and he was sub. I mean, we didn't have that. But that doesn't count for nothing, in my opinion, how much the S-man is worth sitting on the bench. We didn't play well. It wasn't a great preparation in pre-season, that's for sure. And I go back, I made errors in letting players go that I shouldn't have let go, and bringing in players that I should not have brought in. And bottom line, that's it, down to the manager.
Yeah, okay. When I go to talk about your sacking, I think it was an odd time in my opinion, because although the record at that point wasn't that amazing, we had just won 2 games on the bounce. I think it was Crewe away, we beat 3-0, and then we beat MK Dons at home by 3-2. Then we went and lost to Shrewsbury, and that ended up being your last game. And it felt like, because I was talking to Nelson, he said the timing felt weird for him because he felt as though we just turned a corner results-wise. Like, albeit we did lose that game against Shrewsbury, but the 2 before we won back-to-back, and it seemed like we were slowly but surely getting somewhere. And then it obviously kind of puts the players back to square one in a sense, because the manager's gone and they have to now get someone else in who's going to have new ideas and go from there. But, you know, as you say, it is football, but I want to talk about how difficult it was for you finding out, because obviously I'm pretty certain you were doing a BT Sport game for Barnet, I believe, at the time. And I think you received a text, was it about 10 minutes before half time in that game, and then you had the conversation with Paul, and then you had to come straight back out to do the half time review. It must have been a really, really tough situation to get yourself through after hearing that news.
Yeah, it was a bit strange. Having just been sacked and you've got to stand in front of a live interview.
Yeah.
It was a bit weird. But hey ho, there's never a good time. He wasn't to know that I was doing that TV programme and scouting on Barnet.
Did you feel as though, in a sense, you still had more to give to Gillingham at that time, or did you feel in the back of your mind that a decision like that might have been coming? And was there, although you obviously respect the decision, which is very noble of you, was there a bit of you that felt like you, with a bit more time, you could have been on to something a bit better with the team in that season, considering we had seemed to just be turning our form around at the time?
We were turning the form around, and what happens, and you'll see this most years, is teams that get promoted and are successful and champions, quite often after that high peak, afterwards there can be a dip in form. It happens a lot. We had our dip in form after the euphoria of winning the league. We didn't know where to aim for. We didn't have any goal setting because we didn't know whether we could get into the playoffs. We didn't know whether we were going to be fighting relegation. So we were all going into it a little bit kind of not in the dark, but in a bit like, what are we aiming for? The players, some of them, weren't good enough for that step up. But with form, it comes back. It does come back. After mentally overcoming being champions and going through some of those games where they'd be nervous whether they could deal with it at that level, we were starting to see the signs of improvement. It wasn't enough for the owner. That's fine. No problem. And I never, ever have a problem with the owners for sacking me. Because when better things have come my way, I've gone myself to benefit myself financially and the family financially, and also improve my opportunities. So I've never, ever complained about someone sacking me.
No, I suppose that makes sense as you really talk about you do what's best for you in your career and your prerogative.
My family.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a big difference. My family. I have to do what's best for my family. And for football clubs and the people that have got Gillingham tattooed on their arm and wear a Gillingham shirt every day on Saturday mornings to go to their game, is different for when you work for the club as a manager to when you support a club and you've got blue and white blood pumping through your veins on a match day.
Yeah, it was a tough season for you to deal with, of course, but in the beginning of it, you obviously had the harsh reality of for Matt Fish anyway. He was a player you obviously mentioned was so good the season before, and he had that heartbreaking injury in the first game of the season, just coming off the back of being a champion. And then his whole season's over in the first game, and that was obviously a key member of your title winning campaign. He's out for the rest of the season. That's obviously a big chunk taken away, and it does make the job a bit more difficult. But just to finish on your Gillingham time before we end on some Twitter questions, just sum up for us as fans your experience with Gillingham and how influential it was on your career and your life.
On my life,
yeah,
it's been a highlight. It's that highlight of my footballing career. Like I said earlier, I wasn't a really good player, but I tried my best as a player to make the best of my ability that I had. And I had limited ability. It was only mainly through hard work that I got to have a decent career at a decent level. And to go into management and be known as a firefighter type management and be successful, it's got to be said, in saving a lot of clubs from relegation. To move into Chatham Dockyard with my wife and build that team and build the spirit amongst the supporters and the people, it's been amazing. Absolutely amazing. I will never, ever forget my highlight was walking out onto the pitch to be presented with a trophy. First person out on that corner flag to walk out in front of all those Gillingham fans. I will never, ever forget that moment. It was unbelievable.
Just before we get onto the Twitter questions, just thought of this in terms of proud moments. What was the feeling like when you saw Charlie score his first goal for the team?
I was okay with separating Charlie from everybody else and everything else. I was absolutely 100% professional. Charlie's a fantastic athlete, And with that team, when it came to the big games, if you check it out, he often played a part in the big games because of his mobility and his athleticism, and he had a big heart. When he scored, of course, I was proud. But once again, it wasn't who scored, well done, Charlie, I've got a tear rolling down my face. It was, how are we going to win this game? How are we going to win this game? Get in possession, get in position, ready for your next tackle so we can win this game. It wasn't about my own son. And I think, if anything, I treated him differently to everybody else and kept him at a distance.
Yeah, of course. Before we finish off, we're going to end on a few questions we got from Twitter that we can just run through with you quickly, Martin, and start with a slightly interesting one, actually, in terms of how you rank yourself against these two. Darren Chandler says, if you had to choose, which one would you prefer to face in a boxing match, Adam Barrett or Danny Kedwell?
Oh, I'll take Kedwell any day.
Well, I don't know. After calling him a donkey, he's probably got it in for you already.
What do you mean you don't know?
Well, I don't know. He's not a small lad, is he, Danny? He's a tough boy.
Yeah, but you asked me. He didn't ask you. Who do you want to take on? Adam Barrett or Danny Kedwell? I'll take Kedwell.
Do you think you'd beat him, though?
Yeah, of course I would.
Well,
Danny Kedwell.
Yeah, all right. Well, if you say so.
Bring it on a day.
Sure, we can get that arranged.
Nothing.
So we can get it. We spoke to him recently. We can arrange that if you like.
No, thank you.
Huh?
No, thank you.
Oh, there you go.
Don't need to arrange it. You've asked the question. What's the next question? Danny Kedwell.
Barry Davis says, who was the most influential player in that title-winning team?
That is a good question. Owen, we had... You ready for this?
Yeah.
Dion Burton, Danny Kedwell, Adam Barrett, Stuart Nelson, and I had those four players. I think there may have been one more. I had those four players as a committee. I spoke to those players all the time in my office with a closed door about what training we should do, what we need to do, what I need to do, and how we're going about things. And all four of them contributed honestly. Nothing they said to me ever went out of my office. Nothing I said to them was to go out to the players unless I let them know that I wanted it to go to the players. So I've got to say those four were influential.
Yeah.
The one person that doesn't ever get a mention that was influential, because he was funny, he was a great laugh, was Tommy Forecast.
Oh, yeah, big Tommy. Remember him.
Tommy used to make everybody laugh. He was dry sense of humour. I don't know what he was like as a goalkeeper. I have no idea. But behind the scenes, he was influential.
I can only remember him playing a couple of games. I think he played in the Burton one at the end of the season. We'd already won the league, and I think Nelson got sent off away at Accrington, and he had to come on for the last half hour or so of that game. I think. So it's off the top of my head. Lee Clifton.
We all love everybody in that squad. Will say we all love Tommy Forecast without a shadow of a doubt.
It's an interesting one. Not many would have thought of that. Shows how tight knit the squad is. Then.
Yes, it was very tight. They're like brothers.
Lee Clifton says, is the 2012-2013 League 2 title winning squad at Gillingham the best group of players you've ever worked with?
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. That season, I know Port Vale went above us once.
Yeah.
Only in a whole season. To do what we did was quite unbelievable. Unbelievable. We were 7 points clear for most of that season, weren't we?
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. It's remarkable. What Liverpool are doing now is unique, what they're doing. And what we did was unique. And we had squad players, subs, that would go in and play. And it would never bother me about changing the players round, because they could all go and play in a winning team, all of them. Jackman, do you remember Jackman? He was hardly played.
Danny Jackman, yeah.
And we put him in for a game. Flipping hell, that goal that he scored with his left foot,
Exeter.
ripping into that top corner, was unbelievable.
Exeter, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's it, unbelievable. So we had such good players. And he was one I felt sorry for because I just couldn't really get him into the team.
He's at a stage of the year. He's a great professional, though, Danny.
Diamond, an absolute diamond. And I really wanted to help him, which is why I sort of let him go, to help him and his wife with their young children. But in an ideal world, I should have kept him, but I had to do it for him as a person.
I'm going to the last three now. Dean McBeano says, is there one player you tried to sign for Gillingham, but that looked to be agreed, but you couldn't quite get it over the line?
No.
Really? No?
Once we had players lined up, Mr. Scally done the business and signed everyone I wanted.
Great. That's very good, actually. Good answer. I like that. Callum Ashby says, when you were obviously manager at Gills, did you see the potential of Bradley Dack at the time, and are you surprised at how good a player he's gone on to become?
Bradley Dack?
Yeah.
Do you know what happened with Bradley Dack?
I know a story about, I think it was at Wickham, you gave him his debut and then hauled him off at half time.
We were going to France on a pre-season trip. I've just put a mouthful of cake in my mouth. Hold on a minute. We could take 20 players.
Yeah.
We only had 19. So we sort of asked around to see other staff, who should we take? Because Bradley Dack wasn't on the list. Or he was 22 player, I think it was, because we wanted to play 11v11 at different times. Bradley Dack wasn't on the list to go. I'd never seen Dack. I didn't even know who he was. And then the day before we were going away to France, we played Dagenham and Redbridge at home. And it was one of those games where there's 3 30-minute games. You know those games? Training game. It was 0-0. And in the last half an hour, I saw this boy on the side who's been flicking the ball about. And he went on for the last half hour. Never seen him play before. After 2 minutes, he had a chance that the goalkeeper saved in the box. Nearly scored. 5 minutes later, he had another shot inside the box that just missed the post. Nearly scored. 10 minutes to go, it's still 0-0. Dack hits a shot and it goes in the bottom corner. We win 1-0. I went back to my office, had the staff upstairs, and could someone tell me, that kid that played at the end, how many goals did he get last season in the youth team? And someone said 24. What, from midfield? Yeah. 24 goals. And he's not in the first team. 24 goals in midfield. Those people are like gold dust, if you can find them.
Yeah, ridiculous numbers.
So, that came with us, and he was in the younger group that had to do all the extra running. The group, like the 18 and 19s, that need to make that transformation from youth team to men's team. And I've done the running, and the first team squad used to watch the younger players run, and it was tough. Dack won every race by a long way. And most of them were puking up at the end of it. And I thought, oh my God, this kid is a player. Oh my God, we've got something. So I put him on the list to go to France. Put him on the list to come to first team training then, and we gave him a squad number. And then I had a couple of little chats with Brad and his mum and dad as well. Lovely people. And then to see him go on and do as well as what he's done is no surprise, because he had unbelievable running ability. He had great self-belief. He could finish, and he was hungry. And he had self-belief. So that's the story of Bradley Dack. And I'm going to wind you back a second now.
Yep.
What player did you not sign? I think that was your question. I can't remember the guy's name.
Yeah.
A minute ago. And I said Mr. Scally got everybody.
Yeah.
When we played Dagenham that day, they had a player playing up front called Dwight Gale.
Yeah.
He had white hair. And I think it's okay to say he was quite small, black lad with white hair. So he was outstanding in that way, so to speak. And I hope I'm not being rude or disrespectful to him.
No.
But he was outstanding. And then a cross came into the box, and he climbed up above Adam Barrett like, oh my God, he's just gone up about 6'4", and he's only 5'7". After the second 30 minutes, I rang Mr. Scally in Dubai and said, Mr. Scally, I've just seen a player, we need to buy him. This is in the between the second and the third part of this little game. And he said, who is it? I said, he plays for Dagenham. His name's Dwight Gale, so I found out from someone from Dagenham. I said, what a player. I said, you need to buy him. We need to buy him now. Got to sign him. So an hour later, I rang him again. He said he's spoken to them. He's made an offer. We made an offer for Dwight Gale before he got big time. And wasn't enough. And then soon after that, he signed for Peterborough, I think it was.
Yeah, Peterborough.
We were that close to having him. If we had signed Dwight Gale, without a shadow of a doubt, when we went up to Division 1, we'd have been near the top in Division 1 because he was that good. He was in a similar mould to DJ Campbell, who I signed from non-league in the early days at Brentford. Very fast, very quick, very hungry, and a great player. But we just didn't bid enough money for him.
What a signing that would have been. He's had a great career as well. It's just the eye for the player.
Oh God, yeah, brilliant player. But that's Paddy Dack, and then obviously to see him go on and do what he's done. Every now and then I send him a text message and I get one back. He's a great lad as well. I really, really like him as a person, and his mum and dad. So great to see him go on and do so well. And I often get a thank you text from him because the running and the training that he had to do was not what you'd probably want to do. But it certainly took him, I feel, it helped take him to another level.
Yeah, we've done relatively well in terms of finding players and moving them on for good. We had, I think, a couple of seasons after you left, we had John Egan come through. He's now obviously playing for Sheffield United in the Premier League. So do well in that respect. We're going to leave you with one more question, Martin. This is a bit of a difficult one. You're gonna make 5 people very happy and then upset probably about 100. Can you name your ideal 5-a-side team from the players you've managed? So 5 players you've managed in a 5-a-side team.
What, at Gillingham?
Just your whole career.
Oh, blimey. My wife just made some banana cake and that's nice. Whole career. Well, DJ Campbell's got to be in it.
Yep.
He was good. Keith Andrews has got to be in it. He was good. I'm not sure Stuart Nelson would get in it because he kicks it a long way and you can't kick it a long way in 5-a-side. I don't know what my best 5-a-side team is. You phoned that one on me, ain't you? Why didn't you text me that this morning? I could give you all the info.
Well, you've got to put you on a spot at some point.
I can't put Leon Legg in it because he's not the best footballer type. He's a good defender. I'd say the right-sided defender from Leicester would be Bruno Ngotti.
Yeah.
Right-footed World Cup winner with France. And when I was at Leicester for that short time, I remember playing 8-a-side World Cup, and he was captain of the French team at the training pitch, and he couldn't understand why we were playing World Cup, and it was just a training game. So Bruno would be in there, DJ Campbell, Keith Andrews, goalkeeper, best goalkeeper I've had would be Graham Stack.
Barnet, isn't it?
Yeah, Premier League winner, Championship winner, conference winner, stacking goal. Bruno Ngotti on the right. I need a left-sided centre-back. Andy Yeardon would have to be in that, who's now at Reading. I had him at Barnet. He's more quicker than Bruno Ngotti, so he'd take Bruno Ngotti's place. Bruno, your sub-son. And Yeardon on the right. On the left, he was quick and played at left. Joe Martin. Let's have Joe. Joe Martin on the left and Yeardon on the right. Keith Andrews in the middle. Up front would be DJ Campbell, and to play alongside DJ but to come back and help Keith to give us a little bit of defending, I'd put in there 100% commitment, and if it ever kicked off you'd have him on your side, Danny Kedwell.
Well, you're the one who's put the most thought into that. Most people just say names and round off. You probably come through and given your actual reasons. So there's a nice five-a-side team there. Martin, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. This is going to be an episode that people are going to love, I'm sure. It's been absolutely wonderful to record with you. Obviously, as I said, I've started, you're a legend in my eyes at the club. So thank you very much for coming on. Thank you for the time. It's been an absolute pleasure. And hopefully everything keeps going well with the family and enjoy your time off.
Lovely. Thanks ever so much, Owen. It's nice to chat with you, and best wishes to all the Gillingham fans. Best wishes to you all, and take care and stay safe.
Thanks, Martin.